1. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you, Karen. There is encouraging news in the fight against COVID-19. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York has more in this live report.
And Michael, coronavirus cases in the U.S. increased 1.2% from the day before. That's the slowest pace for the month of April. Anthony Fauci, the U.S. government's top infectious disease expert, says a vaccine could be available by January. President Trump will travel to Camp David today, his first time leaving the White House compound in over a month. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK has passed the peak of the coronavirus outbreak. But there's also some sobering news this morning. A group of experts warns the pandemic may last as long as 2 years. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
John, thank you, sir. Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Organizers say employees of Amazon, Whole Foods, Target, and FedEx have become the unexpected frontline workers of the pandemic. The groups are planning rallies against tight stay-at-home orders they say are crippling the U.S. economy. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's 5:49 on Wall Street, and this is Bloomberg Daybreak live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Let's talk more about Amazon and Apple after the earnings reports after the close yesterday. Paul Sweeney's back with us, host of Bloomberg Surveillance and Bloomberg Markets. You know, all week long we've been talking about the resiliency of the tech sector, and then CEO of Apple, Jeff Bezos, comes out and says this is the hardest time Amazon has ever faced. How surprising is this, Paul?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he was, pretty upfront with that. I mean, Amazon, clearly with the shift to at-home shopping is really on the front lines of this. And net, it's very positive for Amazon. Kind of how consumer behavior is changing. We're consuming more and more products at home. We're getting more and more deliveries at home, and of course that plays in well to the story at Amazon. And as more and more people work from home, they're using more and more of the cloud products from Amazon Web Services. So all in all, it's good for Amazon. But Jeff Bezos clearly was very, I think very somber and very, as he talked about the current environment that his company and all of us are working under, and his workers are on the front lines, and they're very exposed, and he acknowledged that. So I think just a very kind of sober assessment of kind of where the environment is. But I think investors will step back and say this will probably be an interesting time for Amazon as more and more people kind of embrace some of the business models that Amazon has been championing.
Yeah, I wonder whether you think investors are going to be willing to support Amazon longer term as it takes these steps to protect its workers.
Yeah, I think historically, Amazon's a story that's been very interesting for investors. Investors have been willing to give Jeff Bezos and Amazon the benefit of the doubt in terms of sacrificing near-term profitability for long-term revenue growth, particularly in the form of Amazon being able to invest whatever it takes to get those products to you as quickly as possible. So if that's more fulfillment centers, more distribution centers, and the investments taken there to improve the service to ensure long-term profitability and long-term market share. Investors have historically been very, very supportive of Amazon and Jeff Bezos. I suspect that's going to be the case here.
You got to think that the cloud business, the outsized share of the cloud business that Amazon has is still going to provide support for the company longer term, don't you think?
Absolutely. It does it in two ways. First, in terms of revenue growth, the cloud business for not just Amazon, but also for Microsoft and Alphabet as well, continues to be a source of real strong revenue growth. And what's interesting for Amazon is the cloud business, unlike the core e-commerce business for Amazon, the cloud business for Amazon is actually very profitable with real strong operating profit margins. So it really helps them in terms of generating profit and free cash flow. So it's a really important business for Amazon, which is one of the reasons why they spend so much money investing in that business.
All right, let's turn to Apple now. Hasn't provided a forecast for the first time in a decade. How big a concern is that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that was a little bit of a surprise for investors in terms of not providing guidance for revenue. But I think the reality is they just don't know. I mean, they honestly just don't know. And so like a lot of companies that have pulled their guidance for the upcoming quarter or maybe even multiple quarters, it just reflects the fact that we're in a kind of a new world here. We're not sure about consumer behavior, consumer trends. So some of the, I think the models that they use to forecast demand for a lot of their products and services, they're just not that confident, and so they're taking that as an opportunity to pull guidance. But I think the quarter results were generally very, very good for Amazon and kind of showed the resiliency of the diversification of their business. Its products, phones, computers, iPads, all that type of hardware that we've come to know and love Apple about, but it's also about their services business, which is about 20% of their revenue, and kind of really kind of the growth story for the business going forward is the services business. So I think they're in good shape. They just, I think, are reflecting the times that we're in right here.
And amid the uncertainty, the company's raising its dividend and increasing share buybacks. Good move.
Yeah, I mean, this is a company that, it's got, more than $100 billion of net cash, even if you take away the debt, and probably generates free cash flow in $50 to $60 billion a year. So tremendous amount of liquidity at the company. It's always been a question of what did they do with that liquidity? What did they do with all that free cash flow? There's not much on the acquisition front for them. So what they've historically done is return that cash to shareholders in the form of dividends and buybacks.
All right, Paul Sweeney, host of Bloomberg Markets and Bloomberg Surveillance here on Bloomberg Radio. Amazon shares fell 5% in late trading on that forecast from CEO Jeff Bezos. And looking at Apple in the pre-market, it is down more than 3%, Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities says the coronavirus pandemic could result in state budget shortfalls of $650 billion over 3 years. That is based on data from the Congressional Budget Office. The federal lawsuit filed in California charges the social media app TikTok collected children's face scans without permission. And the NCAA is being sued by female college students who claim the association did not address violence and harassment against them by male student athletes.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
Now, other legal news we're watching this morning includes a federal appeals court ruling Kansas can't require voters to show proof of citizenship. For more on the decision, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to Richard Berfault, a professor at Columbia Law School.
How big an impact will the 10th Circuit decision that the Kansas law requiring proof of citizenship to vote was unconstitutional, how big an impact will that have?
Well, I think, it's a pretty extensive opinion. As you know, the Secretary of State of Kansas, the guy who is pushing this, Chris Kobach, is a leading advocate of this view that there is a lot of voter fraud out there and that justifies more restrictive administrative requirements on voters. And this case involves an extensive review of the record. He had the chance to build up a record to show this, and they were simply unable to show it. And that's what the 10th Circuit says, that the evidence out there is, particularly of in-person voting fraud, just to make clear that the case focused mostly on the idea that people who are showing up at the polls or using somebody else's name or were voting multiple times. And the court says there's just no evidence of that to support the kinds of restrictive activities, restrictive rules that he was pushing for. This might be the highest level court in the most legally authoritative way that went through this and in a very long opinion basically said kind of there was no there.
President Trump has started a narrative that mail-in ballots allow cheating. Is voting by mail more open to fraud?
I think that is true. I mean, I think everyone would agree that who study this, that there's not a lot of voter fraud out there, but to the extent that there is, it's more likely to be in vote by mail because the ballots, there's a point where they go out of the hands of the voter before they get into the hands of the election system. So it does require more security. There is a greater possibility of fraud. Now, the states that have gone to vote by mail say that there's been very little fraud, but I think we do have to acknowledge that vote by mail does raise issues and is going to require more investment in security to make sure that the ballots aren't tampered with and that the voting is honest. I think it's a fair concern, but it has been very exaggerated in the way it's been raised.
And that's Columbia law professor Richard Briffault speaking with Bloomberg's June Grosso. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures down about 59 points. Dow futures down 454 and NASDAQ futures down 225. The euro 1.0982 against the dollar. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation. This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Friday, May 1st, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures sink after sobering earnings from Amazon and Apple.
The COVID-19 outbreak has the iPhone maker declining to give a forecast for the first time in a decade.
And Jeff Bezos calls the pandemic the hardest time Amazon's faced in its 25-year history.
New Jersey Governor Murphy calls his meeting at the White House productive. Plus, President Trump speculates that China released COVID-19 in a lab by mistake. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. LeBron James weighs in on the NBA's return. A veteran quarterback gets released, and a former U.S. Open champ says this year's tourney should not be played.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are tumbling after the best month for stocks since 1987. Several markets in Europe and Asia are closed for a holiday. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 59 points. Dow futures down 453. NASDAQ futures down 224. The 10-year Treasury up 10/30 seconds, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil's down 2% or 38 cents at $18.46 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.7% or $12.10 at $16.82.10 an ounce. Nathan.
Well, Karen, the slide in global stocks comes after earnings from Amazon and Apple. So let's begin with Amazon. The company saw profits shrink as it boosts operation spending to navigate the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, revenue jumped 26%. Dan Ives is managing director of equity research at Wedbush Securities.
It just shows the balancing act that Bezos and Amazon need to do in terms of top-line growth, but in an unprecedented environment where basically they're the key artery for most consumers in the U.S. and Europe.
On the earnings call, CEO Jeff Bezos told investors Amazon's navigating the hardest time it's ever faced. The company issued a wide forecast for the current quarter, saying income could range anywhere from a $1.5 billion gain to a $1.5 billion loss. Rohit Kothari is an analyst at MKM Partners.
I think the bigger question here is, does Amazon think there is something structural going on. Is there something that is permanent, behavior change or permanent change in their cost structure as a result of what the world is going through right now?
And according to Reuters, Amazon is now extending its work from home plan to October, another 5 months from now. Shares fell on the results, down nearly 5% in late trading.
Apple's reporting quarterly revenue that grew 1% for the first time in a decade. The iPhone maker is not providing a forecast, and that's sparking concern that performance could suffer later this year. Anand Srinivasan is with Bloomberg Intelligence.
The fact that the June quarter is going to be substantially weaker is unsurprising. Everybody was looking for magnitudinally how bad it could get. And we think that things aren't as bad as they could have been.
Apple's sales and revenue in the period beat estimates, but it's a future that worries investors. Bloomberg's Emily Chang spoke with CEO Tim Cook about the results. He says they're already seeing a rebound in sales.
Tim Cook told me the last part of March and the first part of April were very depressed, and then we've seen a pickup relative to that period of time in the second half of April. We're not projecting what we're going to do this quarter because of the lack of certainty and the lack of visibility, but I did get a chance to ask Cook about his pipeline of future products and whether the pandemic will impact some of the products we're expecting from Apple later this year. He said the supply chain remains resilient and durable. He also told me we couldn't be more proud of our current lineup, and we're as excited as ever about the pipeline. We've rapidly built the muscle to run the company from this kind of way. I'm Emily Chang, Bloomberg in San Francisco.
All right, Emily, thank you. And despite the uncertainty, Apple is raising its dividend and expanding a share buyback plan by $50 billion. Still, shares are down more than 3% in the pre-market.
And also weighing on sentiment this morning, word that President Trump may block a government savings fund from investing in Chinese stocks. Bloomberg News has learned the action could come in the form of an executive order, though no final decision's been made. It's a move backed by Senator Marco Rubio and others who want to stop the fund from transferring money to indexes that include China.
Well, up next, we are getting earnings from some of the biggest names in oil. Results from Exxon and Chevron come on the heels of an unprecedented sell-off in crude. And here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Both ExxonMobil and Chevron have been hit hard by the crash in oil prices. Exxon is expected to report its lowest profit since 1989. The company warned several weeks ago that earnings would be reduced. Chevron's expected profit of 77 cents a share is down 44% versus last year. Its refineries in the Pacific Basin were especially hard hit, with margins in Asia and California among the first to be squeezed by the coronavirus lockdowns. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thanks. While the coronavirus pandemic hits profits, we're seeing more signs the outbreak is easing. Joining us live with the very latest is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. On the last day of April, daily U.S. infections came in at the slowest pace of the entire month, an increase of just over 1%. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK is past the peak of the outbreak. Spain recorded a steep decline in new cases. More than 30 U.S. states are set to ease stay-at-home restrictions by the end of next week. But it's not all good news. Research from the University of Minnesota says the pandemic could last as long as 2 years. Experts in a new report say the outbreak won't be controlled until about 2/3 of the world's population is immune. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Infections in California are rising, but showing signs of stability, and that has the state making plans for the future. Ed Baxter has the latest from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to get ahead of the game in preparation of the state possibly opening up. He is attacking the child care issue.
Working partnership with our hospital system up and down the state, we were able to partner with them, partner with others to put 432 pop-up child care facilities, very strategically placed.
He says rating information is up on the state's COVID-19 website. Also going to shut down the beaches in Orange County where people broke the guidelines last weekend. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, and thank you again. S&P futures are down 56 points. Dow futures down 433, and NASDAQ futures down 218. The euro at 1.0982 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.77, and NYMEX crude oil down 2.4%. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thanks. 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy met with President Trump and members of the coronavirus task force at the White House yesterday. Murphy says the meeting was productive and made the case for more funds for his state government.
This money is not a bailout. It is about funding our response and keeping our police, firefighters, EMTs, educators, and other frontline workers on the job.
New Jersey reported an additional 460 deaths from the coronavirus, a record one-day increase. But the state has seen downward trends. New Jersey Health Commissioner Judy Persicelli.
Our hospitalizations appear to be going down, but our individuals, our patients that need critical care is basically staying the same.
New York reported an additional 306 deaths yesterday. Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a contact tracing pilot program. It aims to hire thousands of people who will trace who has COVID-19 and where it is spreading. Cuomo says it is one piece of a larger strategy before the state can think about reopening.
Testing, then you trace, then you isolate, and that remains the key to controlling the rate of infection.
Meanwhile, New York City will stop subways from 1 to 5 a.m. every day to disinfect the trains. President Trump says he can't get into the details, but he's seen evidence the coronavirus came from a Chinese biosafety lab.
Whether they made a mistake or whether it started off as a mistake and then they made another one, or did somebody do something on purpose? Say, hey, I don't understand how how people weren't allowed into the rest of China, but they were allowed into the rest of the world. That's a hard question for them to answer.
In a statement, the intel community agrees with the scientific consensus that the virus was not man-made or genetically modified. Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Meanwhile, other protesters will take to the streets to demand states loosen shelter-in-place rules. Several airlines, Delta, American, and United, would follow JetBlue and make passengers wear face masks. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
All right, Nathan. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said he'd have to make some type of decision on whether to resume the season and when, where, and how he'd do it by May 1st. Well, it's May 1st. We'll see what Silver has to say. LeBron James weighed in yesterday on Twitter that he's ready to play in response to a report that there are league execs and agents who don't want to. LeBron said nobody should cancel anything, and he's got reason to want to play. His Lakers at the time of the shutdown were 49-14. If the Patriots want a veteran quarterback, one's available. Andy Dalton, released by Cincinnati, their starting QB for 9 years, took the Bengals to the playoffs in each of his first 5 seasons, although his playoff record was 0-5. His job in Cincy going to Joe Burrow, who the Bengals just took with the first pick of the draft. The feeling is the Patriots not interested in Dalton, still sticking with veteran Brian Hoyer and the youngster Jarrett Stidham. The latest sports institution to get scrapped by the virus, the Little League World Series, began in Williamsport, Pennsylvania in 1947, had been held every year since, not this year. NASCAR's coming back 2 weeks from tomorrow, Darlington, South Carolina, without fans. It'll be the first of 4 Cup Series races in an 11-day span, 2 in Darlington, 2 in Charlotte. A decision on the U.S. Open tennis will be made in June. Boris Becker, who won the Open in 1989, said he doesn't think the tournament should be played since New York has been the worst city hit. Tomorrow would have been the 146th Kentucky Derby. It's been rescheduled for September. NBC tomorrow will show a virtual race with the 13 horses that have won the Triple Crown. Secretariat is the favorite. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. Join us tonight for the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. With no Summer Olympics this year, what does an athlete do? We'll speak with former ice hockey gold medalist and 4-time Olympian Angela Ruggiero. It's tonight at 7, tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio, or subscribe to the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. S&P futures down 54 points. Dow futures lower by 420. NASDAQ futures down 214 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now if
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today. Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Bloomberg Television. Here's Manus Crenny.
Standard Chartered has put aside $956 million against potential losses as problem loans spike during the coronavirus pandemic. And joining us now is the CFO, Andy Halford. So, Andy, great to have you with Nera and I this morning. The market wants to get to grips with understanding where you are right now with your loan loss provisions and how tough or how bad a number we could look at for 2020. So take us through the numbers and the guidance for the end of the year.
Okay, good morning to you. So just very quickly on the numbers, we've actually had a strong start to the year, especially given the external environment. So our top line actually was up by 6% for the quarter, and that was in a period when particularly the coronavirus was impacting our businesses in Northern Asia. So overall, actually, a very strong start on the top line, good control of expenses. The one area that you referred to where we have taken additional charges was the credit impairment. And I think, like with most banks, there has been obviously a need to top up on the provisions given the current environment.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures sinking this morning. S&P futures down 54 points. Dow futures down 413. NASDAQ futures down 211. 10-year Treasury up 10/30 seconds. Yield 0.60%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 2.25% or 41 cents at $18.43 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, there is encouraging news in the fight against COVID-19. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York has more in this live report.
And Michael, coronavirus cases in the U.S. increased 1.2% from the day before for the slowest pace for the month of April. Anthony Fauci, the U.S. government's top infectious disease expert, says a vaccine could be available by January. Well, there's also some sobering news. A group of experts warns the pandemic may last as long as 2 years. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It is 6:18 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and with continued uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus outbreak and how long it could last, Apple is declining to provide a forecast for the first time in more than a decade. Let's bring in Gene Munster now, co-founder of Loop Ventures, for more on Apple's earnings. Good morning, Gene. Nice to talk with you this morning. So since Apple isn't telling us where it thinks it's going, we turn to you. What's your forecast for the iPhone maker?
Well, this is going to be a up and down year for Apple, just like every company. I think you're going to see just lack of visibility through the June. September should see a modest uptick, but to kind of put it in perspective, is that the iPhone maker was probably plus 12% revenue growth for essentially the first half of the quarter. The second half of the quarter, they don't break this up, you can back into it, was probably down 17%, up 12 to down 17. So the June quarter, they're going to start to kind of creep back out of that hole. September looks better, and I think if you are investing versus trading, you want to make a clear distinction, is that 2020 is not going to be an inspiring year. But everything that the company is doing now is really laying the groundwork for what will be a stronger 2021. I think competitively from a product lineup, that the growth should rebound to probably 15%, plus 15% next year. So to answer your question, Nathan, is essentially think of 2020 as a throwaway year for a lot of companies, Apple included. But the exciting part is that everything that they're doing is going to really position the company well for the long term.
Of course, before this pandemic arose, the strategy from CEO Tim Cook was a shift away from focus on the hardware, the devices, to the service side. Do you see a need for Cook to tweak that strategy to get through this pandemic?
No, I think that really what is the surprising part about their messaging yesterday is that they're changing nothing as far as the timing of their products. Still expect a 5G phone. It is going to be a combination of hardware, software, and services. So the services element, it's still, call it, just over 20% of revenue, growing in the high teens. So that business is doing relatively well. But that is an important part of the story. But what is unique about Apple versus any other tech company is this is truly a combination of hardware and software and services. And so I think that their strategy going forward of continuing to announce new consumer services like Apple TV and their arcade service, along with new hardware, whether it's new versions of wearables. They did hint last night that they're going to be adding new biomarkers to some of their wearables. If you think about Apple Watch and the EKG feature for your heart, sounds like that they're going to be adding other things, maybe for glucose monitoring, for example, or blood pressure monitoring. So it's those type of hardware insights from the wearables along with services to help manage those hardware insights that makes Apple unique.
Is there a reason to see signs of optimism for Apple's short to medium term outlook with China starting to increase some of its activity now?
Yeah, I want to kind of frame in the optimism for Apple versus kind of what some of the other tech companies have had, is that Tim Cook was very clear that China took a step back, and then in the months of March and then again in April saw sequential improvements. He also mentioned that across all geographies in the month of April, he saw an uptick, was the language that he used. So that was positive. It is a sign for optimism, undoubtedly. The reason why that wasn't viewed as positively, the stock's down a few percent in the pre-market, is that he also cautioned that things will, his word was, worsen in the June quarter. That gets back to that down 17% that we talked about earlier, just digging out of that hole. And so I think that the message is this: it is getting better. It's still down. It's getting, maybe said in a slightly different way, less bad, but less bad is indeed a positive.
What's your reaction to Apple signaling it's going to raise its dividend and boost share buybacks by $50 billion?
Unexpected. It's unprecedented. I think it really speaks to their sense that despite the lack of visibility we talked about this year, they still have high confidence in their business. And that is, I think, investors who can have a long-term view should rest well knowing that they have the confidence to continue to increase their buyback, and you're going to have the cash flow to support that.
Our last minute here, do you see any possibility, any signals down the line that could shake Apple from its schedule for getting its newest products into market?
Things seem to be back on track. One thing that Cook talked about on the call is what's happened on the production side, manufacturing side, the supply chain side. Is the word he uses? It took a shock down, and then it had a quick recovery. You need to have that obviously up and running in order to get products out the door. You also need to have your teams fully functioning. They are not working in the office. It's hard to advance hardware forward. But when you think about the 2020 roadmap, the products that they were originally planning this year, which we think are all on track, when you think about that roadmap, that is something that's been in play for a few years. It takes 3 to 4 years to build an iPhone. I think everything is largely on track.
Good to have you with us, Gene, this morning. Thank you. Gene Munster is co-founder of Loop Ventures. Apple shares are down about 2 2/3% in the pre-market after the earnings release. S&P futures are lower by 53 points. Dow futures down 414. NASDAQ futures down 205 points.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Futures point to a drop at the open. Earnings announcements and economic data have been serving as reminders of the lasting pain from the coronavirus pandemic. Stocks closed lower to end April after the latest jobless claims number showed another 3.8 million Americans seeking first-time unemployment benefits. The broader market yesterday lost about 1%, but for all of April, stocks surged almost to 13%. Amazon said late yesterday it might see a loss in the current quarter as it boosts spending to keep logistics operations running smoothly during the pandemic. In the latest quarter, sales rose 26%, beating estimates. Net income missed. Apple reported quarterly revenue that grew 1% and beat estimates, but the company did not provide a forecast for the first time in more than a decade, sparking concern that performance will suffer later this year. The shares fell. CEO Tim Cook said Apple experienced a very depressed period in late March and early April. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today. Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of text messages containing links. They may appear to be from legitimate senders like the government, a bank or a delivery company, but never enter your online banking information or personal details after clicking on a link.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are tumbling this morning after earnings from Amazon and Apple. Amazon saw profit shrink as it boosts operations spending to navigate the coronavirus pandemic. Here with more is Bloomberg's John Ehrlichman.
You know, the revenue is coming in quickly, but it's a complicated story for Amazon because, yes, they're on the front lines and they're generating a lot of revenue, but, you know, they need to take care of their employees, and I think Jeff Bezos is trying to make a statement with that spending that they're going to do in the second quarter.
Amazon issued a wide forecast for the current quarter, saying income could range anywhere from a $1.5 billion gain to a $1.5 billion loss. CEO Jeff Bezos says it's the hardest time Amazon's ever faced. Shares are down 5% in early trading.
Apple's quarterly revenue grew 1%, but for the first time in a decade, the iPhone maker is not providing a forecast. Bloomberg's Emily Chang spoke with CEO Tim Cook about the results. He's already starting to see a rebound in sales.
Tim Cook, told me the last part of March and the first part of April were very depressed, and then we've seen a pickup relative to that period of time in the second half of April. He also told me we couldn't be more proud of our current lineup. We've rapidly built the muscle to run the company from this kind of way. I'm Emily Chang, Bloomberg in San Francisco.
All right, Emily, thank you. Shares of Apple are currently down about 2.5% in early trading.
Also weighing on sentiment, word that President Trump may block a government savings fund from investing in Chinese stocks. Bloomberg News has learned the action could come in the form of an executive order, though no final decision has been made. It's a move backed by Senator Marco Rubio and others who want to stop the fund from transferring money to indexes that include China.
While the coronavirus pandemic hits profits, we are seeing more signs the outbreak is easing. Joining us live at the very latest, Bloomberg's John Tucker. John?
And Nathan, as we closed out April, daily coronavirus cases in the U.S. increased 1.2% from the day before. That's the slowest pace of the entire month. More than 30 U.S. states are set to ease stay-at-home restrictions by the end of next week. But it's not all good news. Research from the University of Minnesota says the pandemic could last as long as 2 years. Experts say the outbreak won't be controlled until 2/3 of the world's population is immune. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Some headlines crossing the Bloomberg. Honeywell reporting first quarter sales that missed analyst estimates and suspending its full year guidance. And Clorox raising its forecast for the year for organic sales. Futures this morning are lower. S&P futures down 54 points. And straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks for that, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is back with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy met with President Trump and the White House Coronavirus Task Force yesterday. Murphy called it a productive meeting. Murphy also says he appreciates the help his state is getting from the federal government.
It's no secret that the president and I disagree on some things. But that's not going to stop me from doing everything I can to make sure that New Jersey has all the resources we need to move forward.
New Jersey reported an additional 460 deaths from the coronavirus, a record one-day increase, even as hospital data pointed to continued signs of recovery. New York has more than twice as many virus cases as New Jersey, more than 304,000. New York State will hire thousands of people to trace the contacts of people who test positive for COVID-19. Governor Andrew Cuomo says it's important that the plan will not just be for New York.
We'll also be coordinating this contact tracing on a tri-state basis because many of the people who come into New York live in Connecticut, live in New Jersey, go back and forth. We don't want to get limited by jurisdictions when you're doing this contact tracing.
Cuomo also says New York City's subway system would be shut down between 1 and 5 a.m. so that the MTA can disinfect the trains. Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Other groups are planning rallies against tight stay-at-home orders they say are crippling the U.S. economy. President Trump has speculated that China could have unleashed the coronavirus on the world due to some kind of horrible mistake. His intelligence agency said they are still examining a notion put forward by the president and aides that the pandemic may have resulted from an accident at a Chinese lab. The president even suggested that the release could have been intentional.
We're going to see where it comes from. And, look, you know every theory. You had the theory from the lab, you had the theory from many different, the bats, the type of bat, and the bat is 40 miles away, so it couldn't have been here, and it couldn't have been there, and there's a lot of theories, but we have people looking at it very, very strongly.
The Justice Department says it has begun a preliminary inquiry into how taxpayer money was lent out under the Paycheck Protection Program and has already found possible fraud among businesses seeking relief. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's almost 6:36 on Wall Street. It's time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, week after the Cincinnati Bengals took Joe Burrow with the first overall pick of the draft, they released the incumbent quarterback Andy Dalton, tried to trade him, couldn't find a partner, so he becomes a free agent. Would the Patriots, who of course lost Tom Brady, be interested in the 32-year-old, got 9 years experience? The feeling is no. Still sticking with Brian Hoyer, Jarrett Stidham, What seems like an easy decision, Super Bowl champion Chiefs picked up the fifth-year option for star quarterback Patrick Mahomes even before he starts his fourth year. When Mahomes gets his second contract, he could become the NFL's first $40 million a year man. Von Miller of the Broncos, who had COVID-19, has now recovered. The NFL schedule for 2020 supposedly coming out soon, but changes to it could occur, and a major change could happen if college football decides not to have its season. College football is seen as one sport that would really not be the same without fans, and if there are no college games on Saturdays, the NFL might play on Saturdays. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman just said if they hold the Stanley Cup playoffs in the summer, they may not start the next season until December. The NBA may do likewise. They may then do that again in 2021, play through the summer. Tampa Bay Rays, first baseball team to furlough employees, many others taking a pay cut. May 1st, this date in sports history, 1991. Nolan Ryan, at the age of 44, threw his 7th career no-hitter. He had 16 strikeouts in a game against Toronto. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
Okay, John, thanks. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Operation Warp Speed should waste money on vaccines. I'm Max Neeson, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. The U.S. may waste taxpayer money preparing to produce failed COVID-19 vaccines. That is a smart strategy. The Trump administration is putting together an initiative called Operation Warp Speed, aimed at having a vaccine ready for most Americans by year's end. The group probably can't meet that deadline, but it can ensure that millions of doses can be manufactured when a vaccine is ready. Vaccine development is expensive and risky because creating durable immune responses is complicated. What's more, anything given broadly to a healthy population has to clear a high safety bar. The multiple candidates already in human trials are evidence that researchers are working as fast as possible. Operation Warp Speed can coordinate effort, but it can't simplify human biology or lower the high risk of failure. It can speed availability, however, by building out early at-risk manufacturing capacity for multiple promising candidates. Waiting for concrete proof of efficacy before beginning would add months of delay. Ideally, Warp Speed will have robust funding, enough to waste some producing vaccines that don't work out. Wasteful spending on failed candidates is worthwhile because the potential benefits of having just one that works, whether it arrives next January or June, would be priceless. I'm Max Neeson. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It is coming up to 6:39 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
Global coal demand is heading for its biggest annual drop since World War II. Burning coal to make electricity in several European countries has become unprofitable and socially untenable, crowded out by cheap natural gas and the proliferation of renewable energy as well as powerful environmental movements. The pandemic has only hastened its demise. According to an International Energy Agency report, global coal demand will fall by 8%. In Europe, the IEA says demand is set to slump by 20%, while the U.S. will see a 25% fall. The world's biggest coal consumer, China, will see demand fall by 5%, despite a gradual revival of its industries since lockdowns were eased. In the past 2 weeks, Austria and Sweden announced that they have shut their last coal-fired power plants. They've now joined Albania, Belgium, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Norway as countries without coal in their electricity mix. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Okay, Bob, thank you. Now, some other stories we're following. More job cuts in the airline industry. Ryanair says it will eliminate 3,000 positions. The Irish discount carrier says it's going to fly fewer than 1% of its normal passengers in its fiscal first quarter and doesn't expect a full recovery till at least the summer of 2022. WeWork's cutting jobs as well. Sources say the co-working company eliminated more positions yesterday in an ongoing series of cuts since WeWork's failed attempt at an initial public offering last fall. And 3 female employees at Oracle scored a major court victory, gaining the right to represent thousands of others in a gender discrimination lawsuit over pay. California judge certified the class action, allowing that case to advance on behalf of more than 4,000 women who claim Oracle pays men more for doing the same job. Futures pointing to a lower open on this Friday morning. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cozy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
A social distancing tip. Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby, and after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air. And they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. More than half the U.S. will reopen by this weekend. 31 states will be lifting stay-at-home orders, if even just partially. Top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says any troubles the U.S. runs into after reopening will likely not be as bad as they were during the initial outbreak.
What I think you'll see is these spikes
like in certain areas, nursing homes, plants where workers congregate, prisons and places like that. So when you look at the chart, that's where you'll see it.
Joe Biden is expected to give his first public comments on a sexual assault allegation that has roiled his presidential campaign. The presumptive Democratic nominee will appear on MSNBC's Morning Joe to address the allegation by his former Senate staffer Tara Reid that he assaulted her in the 1990s. I'm John Trout.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Is it as ominous this time around?
They talk with the most interesting people.
Are they taking this seriously?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are sinking as investors begin a new month pondering gloomy corporate news and the persistent economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus. Contracts on the NASDAQ 100 index leading the declines in the wake of sobering comments from Amazon.com and Apple about the pandemic's impact. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg, and right now S&P futures are down about 54 points. Dow futures are down 420. NASDAQ futures down 211. And the 10-year Treasury is up 9/32, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil down about 2%, down 36 cents at $18.48 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $7.60 at $16.8660 an ounce. The euro 1.0980 against the dollar, British pound 1.2554, and the yen at 106.78. We are watching earnings cross the Bloomberg. Chevron further reducing its 2020 capital expenditure guidance by up to $2 billion to as low as $14 billion. And Clorox boosted its sales outlook driven by the virus impact. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the coronavirus pandemic is likely to last as long as about 2 years and won't be controlled until about 2/3 of the world's population is immune. That's what a group of experts said in a report from the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. They say because of its ability to spread from people who don't appear to be ill, the virus may be harder to control than influenza. President Trump is making his first journey outside of the White House in over a month, heading to Camp David today. Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Organizers say employees of Amazon, Whole Foods, Target, and FedEx have become the unexpected frontline workers of the pandemic. Other groups are planning rallies against tight stay-at-home orders they say are crippling the U.S. economy. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. We're at 6:49 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital include the Justice Department already finding signs of fraud in small business loans under the Paycheck Protection Program. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying states and cities are looking for $1 trillion in the next round of stimulus relief. And President Trump planning a 7-figure advertising blitz as he comes out of a campaign advertising lockdown. Also making news this morning, Joe Biden about to address a former Senate aide's sexual assault claims in a TV interview this morning. For more, we're joined by Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University. Wendy, we've talked in the past about the Biden campaign, and you've said that the Democratic presumptive nominee needs to find focus heading toward November. How big a potential setback could these allegations from this former Senate aide be for his campaign?
Well, I mean, I think they're very serious, and he has to address them. He hasn't really addressed them, full on yet. He's going to start that, and it's unfortunate for him. Obviously, we don't know if the incident occurred, the way it occurred. I think we'd all like to find that out, and we'd like to hear his response. But in just a pure campaigning sense, the fact that he's now emerging and trying to engage network or cable on this issue is really unfortunate for the Biden campaign, just as President Trump will start to spend from his war chest, which is considerable, to promote his own reelection chances.
It's
just bad timing all around.
Yeah, I want to get a little bit more into the president's shifting strategy in a moment, but what's the potential vulnerability for Democrats down ballot as Biden has to deal with these allegations?
Well, it all depends on how he deals with them and what he says and how credible people think that the woman making the allegations is. And that's really unfortunate for these sorts of things, that's kind of the standard that politics kind of creates these days. But that's the reality. So, and how desperate, literally, are Democrats to believe in Biden just to defeat Trump? I mean, is there a sense that a lot of people will overlook this because it was a long time ago, which is the argument people make to overlook charges from a long time ago, and then say, well, President Trump has his own background. We're just going to judge on whether he can take care of the country. And that's the gamble for the Democrats now that this is out in the public sphere.
Now, you have to wonder, with so much of the focus on the coronavirus pandemic, not just its effect on voters themselves, but the president's response to it, whether, that's going to continue to be the driving issue heading into November.
I think the economy is going to be the issue going into November. I think it was going to be the issue before coronavirus, but it was going to be a positive for the president. And now, if the election were today, it'd be a negative. Question is, what does it look like in terms of trajectory? Americans are actually really quite forward-looking when they think about going to the polls and making a choice. Yes, it's what the person has done before, but only related insofar as what people think and where they think they'll be a year from now or 6 months from now. So when people believe that the economy is getting better, that helps the incumbent. So that's what Trump's got to focus on. And you imagine that that's what he'll be saying in his campaign ads now, that the damage could have been much worse if he hadn't exercised strong leadership. I expect that to be the campaign theme. And then he's got to hope somehow that this economy picks up faster than most people are expecting it to do.
So are you thinking then that if the economy does turn positive, that's going to outweigh concerns about the president's response to the pandemic? I would imagine that that's something that Biden is going to be focused on pretty significantly going ahead here.
Yeah, I mean, the people who don't like Trump aren't going to vote for Trump. The people who like Trump are going to vote for Trump. Again, it's a very small slice of America that's up for grabs in November 2020, and it's concentrated in about 5 to 7 states, depending on whose polling you believe. Some of those states have been affected badly by the coronavirus, and some of them haven't. So, the sense to which, Trump will make this out to be an East and West Coast disease and, didn't really affect most of America, and he's going to focus on the economy, that's going to play pretty well in those areas that were not badly affected by coronavirus. Even if it's still around, it's how did it affect your life and how are you recovering from it? And people want to get through it. They want this to get over with. They want the economy to be better. Trump will play on that. He'll say, listen, I'm the guy to take you out of this, and I'm the guy who shepherded a really good economy before this happened. You don't even know what Biden will do. And, that could be very effective in a lot of places in the country.
Now, we're going to start to see a bit of an opening up of the president's political economy here, I think you could say, with a trip to Camp David later today. He's going to be holding a town hall at the Lincoln Memorial this weekend, and campaign sources tell us he's going to be spending 7 figures on political ads. Contrast that to, the daily press briefings that the president's been holding for the last month or so, sort of the free advertising.
Well, I've been a big proponent of the fact that this is a big advantage for the president to be on TV every single day for free for more hours, actually. And the same thing happened in 2016. He got so much free coverage. But clearly his poll numbers were not good based on the sort of inconsistency he displayed in these conferences. Sometimes he's consistent and head on, and then sometimes he's not. So I think his advisor said, no way, we have so much money. Biden doesn't have nearly as much money. Let's actually start shaping your campaign message rather than having the press shape it from covering these briefings. So I think it's a good, smart campaign strategy switch. And he's dying to get out the door. He really thinks he does better when he's on the road. So the fact that he'll go to Arizona and be out there is going to show his voters and his supporters that things are going to get better. And that solidifies his base. I mean, the smart thing the Trump campaign does now is solidify his base and pull back some of those people who voted for him in 2016 to get them to vote for him again.
All right, Wendy, thank you so much. Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University. University. Karen?
Nathan, thank you. 6:55 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
Karen, good morning. Every day at this time, we're looking at small businesses struggling in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we're going to hear from the woman behind a 60-year-old institution in Washington, D.C. Virginia Ali is the co-founder of Ben's Chili Bowl. She created the restaurant with her husband, Ben, in 1958. Today, her sons help her run the place. She spoke with my colleague, Kevin Cirilli, about how the outbreak has impacted her business.
You know, the social distancing has certainly had a big effect on people being able to come. The curfews and the shortened hours that we've had to put in place, and not to mention having to close a couple of our other stores. It's just been difficult. It's been very, very difficult for us.
How has it been in terms of getting access to financial assistance from the government during this pandemic?
We did apply. My son did apply for the first round, and we were unable to get through on that particular round. We were not able to get in because the big boys obviously did get in. We did not. We are now, the second round has come, and my son told me we have been approved for the PPP loan, which is the employee program.
Virginia Ali, the co-founder of Ben's Chili Bowl in D.C., speaking with Kevin Cirilli on Bloomberg Sound On. And we're going to continue bringing you stories of small businesses working to stay afloat during the coronavirus outbreak every day at this time right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. And again, futures are falling this morning with S&P futures down 57 points. Dow futures down 454 and NASDAQ futures down 220. The 10-year Treasury up 9/32, the yield 0.60%, and the yield on the 2-year is at 0.18%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 1.6%, down 30 cents at $18.54 a barrel. Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from...
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny.
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
American economic power and future depends on trade deals.
In many of these countries, we're still seeing people struggling.
Finance.
We're in this vortex of uncertainty. These big companies, they just sometimes lack focus.
Investment.
The markets have become a little bit too addicted to the Fed.
Timing the market is just so difficult.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience
worldwide. Good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up, tension building between President Trump and China. Apple's Tim Cook refusing to forecast the unforecastable. And Amazon's Jeff Bezos pledging to spend even more. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Friday, hello May. Here is your Friday morning price action. Equity futures down 56 points on the S&P 500. Negative 1.9% to kick off the month of May. The month of April, what a month. The best month going all the way back to 1987 for the S&P 500. In the bond market this morning, yields on a US 10-year coming in 3 basis points to 0.61%. I feel like I've said that every single morning, 0.61%. We are still there. In foreign exchange, G10 set up as follows. Euro dollar advancing 0.25%. A slightly stronger euro in the mix. Alongside Tom Keene, then I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramovich. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio. Tom, so much to discuss this morning. Two big names negative in the pre-market, Apple and Amazon. And I wonder if that tells you more about the investors selling the stocks than it does about the leadership at those two companies.
I think they did fine. Pivotal Research, up they go with a price target. We talked to Dan Ives yesterday, and, we can talk about this later, John. Right now, on a May day, I would talk about two things. As you mentioned, the 2-year yield comes in, even with the 10-year yield steady, gold comes in as well. We've never seen a labor economy like this, John, on International Labor Day. I mean, it's extraordinary, the state of the American labor economy with a rent due on this May Day.
24 hours after another 4 million or so jobless claims in America, taking the 6-week total to north of 30 million in just 6 weeks, undoing all of the hard work of the last 10 years. Lisa, looking ahead, tension between China and the President of the United States, I think, is worthy of conversation this morning. The President yesterday evening, saying that more tariffs could be an option on the table.
Well, here, I was reading a number of articles, and first of all, U.S. intelligence agencies have actually pushed back on what President Trump is sort of asserting here, which is that he's seen evidence that a Chinese lab, a Wuhan lab, actually generated this virus. There has been zero evidence. China has pushed back, and he's now trying to basically create some sort of penalty for China. I have to think this is going to be a growing theme heading into the elections. My question is, how much political momentum does President Trump have behind him with other Republicans willing to take serious action, tariffs, sanctions, etc., on China?
This is going to be one of the defining subjects of the upcoming campaign. We'll be catching up with Kevin Cirilli down in Washington a little bit later this hour. We'll do that in about 20 minutes' time. We can begin this program, I'm pleased to say, with Sam Stovall, CFRA Chief Investment Strategist. Sam, great to catch up with you. Let's just talk about the month of April before we start the month of May. What a month of gains. What did we learn in the past 30 days?
Well, I think, John, what we learned was that the market can have a very sharp reflex rally, as we've seen in mega meltdown bear markets since 1929, 37, 73, 2000, and 2008, that we can have 20+% advances and still not know whether the lower low is ahead of us.
Sam, good morning. This has been extraordinary. Your father, the legend, has never seen this. You and I have never seen this as well. I want to go right to the question I'm going to steal from John Farrow. The narrowness of this advance, Sam, you and I never studied. Here we are. We see it. Sam, how do we believe in a stock market led by what? 7 stocks?
Well, we've been seeing up until this week a lot of the market movement being led by very small number of companies, and they're usually the behemoth technology companies. Actually, an article that it would come to mind is Small Wonders, looking at the breadth of the market that is actually expanding. 90% of the S&P 1,500 sub-industries were in positive territory in the past week. Majority of the gains really coming from the small and mid-cap arena, with every single sector in the small and mids outperforming their brethren.
Okay, so what's it mean? I mean, to talk about, let's get a breadth, folks. We're going to do breadth here. Not my bad breath, breadth. Okay, let's do breadth here, Sam Stovall. Is that really signal a shift? Are you kidding me? 3 days of small mid-cap performance signals a shift?
Pass
me the halls.
What I kid you Oh no, 3 days is not a trend to make. But I think that knowing that investors are more are like first graders playing musical chairs, always trying to out anticipate the other. You basically have to look and see whether there could be some sort of a shift going forward. And I think that it was the breadth as well as the volume that was needed in order for investors to believe that there is more staying power to this rally.
Sam, the leadership has been Amazon and the other tech names, and we did get results from Amazon and Apple yesterday. They crushed it on the sales. Apple even increased its dividend and buybacks, and it's being punished ostensibly, or shares are lower, because it withdrew guidance. That's sort of the narrative. Amazon is another story, and it points to a bigger story, this idea that even the companies that are benefiting from the pandemic in a certain way as being staples are seeing their margins shrink. How much has that been adequately priced into the market going forward?
Well, I think that most people are saying we already know that the first quarter earnings, second quarter are going to be abysmal, that we're actually looking to see 4 quarters of declines for earnings and actually looking for a 38% decline in the S&P 500 earnings in the second quarter, with really only looking at utilities posting an increase. But I think most people are basically saying, or at least justifying this advance by saying, we are looking across the valley. We are looking into 2021 and basically saying, okay, this is what we want to be looking for, a 29 to 30% gain in earnings in 2021 for large caps, a 40% gain for mid caps, and a near 60% surge for small caps. So I think investors are basically saying we know that the companies are going to throw in every sink that they can find into 2020 earnings, but that's just going to set us up for an even better 2021.
I think what I struggle with at the moment, Sam, is that these companies still haven't really faced a pure cyclical test, because the shutdown of the economy has actually advantaged some of these companies, including Amazon, the likes of Netflix as well. The true cyclical test for these companies is when the economy reopens and we start to function normally again with much weaker demand compared to where we were 3 months ago. I want to try and understand what that means for advertising spending, what that means for the likes of Google, Facebook. I want to understand what that means for business spending, what that means for the cloud, for the likes of Amazon and others as well. How do you process that kind of thing going into the next 6-12 months, Sam?
Well, that's a good question, because we also have to worry about a second dip with the coronavirus. Expectations that it could come back in full force as early as August of this year and then be at its worst by November of 2020, with the effects being even greater than what we're likely to see right now. So, yeah, the question is, how will consumer behavior change? Obviously, we are so reliant upon technology because we are all cocooned right now.
Sam, we're going to have to jump in because your line's a little bit flaky on our end, so forgive me for that, Sam. We'll try and get you back on the programme again soon so we can continue this conversation. Sam Stovall there of CFRA. Just to pick up where Sam left off, guys, on the issue of some of these big tech names, there was just one quote that I think stood out, jumped out for pretty much everybody as they read through the Amazon press release, and it came from Jeff Bezos, who said the following: if you're a share owner in Amazon, you may want to take a seat. Providing for customers and protecting employees as this crisis continues for more months is going to take skill, humility, invention, and money. This was really, really fascinating in yesterday's press release. Here was a company that quite clearly has faced a bit of a PR storm for all the wrong reasons in the last month or so, trying to put customers and their employees first. And it was there to see all the way through the press release, Tom. Customers, employees, employees, customers, employees, customers, shareholders, get in the back seat.
I really want to say this. I'm going to be delicate, John, in that there's a huge separation right now between the media reporting of the last 12 hours and what the sell side is saying. I'm seeing a sell side looking out like Mr. Bezos and Mr. Cook, out a year, out 3 years, in the case of Doug Cass, out 5 years, hugely enthusiastic, and the media is looking out 3 weeks to try to figure out how they're going to get, their Hall's Mentholyptus box shipped from Amazon. I mean, to me, it was two different stories last night.
I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. And Lisa, just looking at the situation, I think it makes sense that Amazon spends. And by putting their customers and their employees first, they are putting their shareholders first at the end of the game, at the end of the story in years to come. And I also say about Apple, are we really punishing a company for not forecasting the unforecastable?
Yeah, don't get me going. Okay?
Well, I will say, though, about Amazon, the interesting thing to me, this is Jeff Bezos' playbook. He has sacrificed margins all the way up in order to get scale and to secure his customer base. This is a continuation of that, and I just am wondering how big their dominance can possibly get, John.
Gene Munster of Loop Ventures will be with us this hour, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss that conversation. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide, shall we? We can do that with Michael Barr.
Good morning, John, Lisa, Tom. Top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says that if everything falls into place right, there could be a coronavirus vaccine by January. Dr. Fauci spoke during a CNN town hall.
That's an assumption that it's going to be safe, that it's going to be effective, and that we're going to be able to do it quickly. I think each of those are not only feasible, but maybe likely. That's what I mean when I say by January we'll do it. But I can't guarantee it.
Dr. Fauci says he is concerned that some areas in the United States are skipping important steps in their virus control efforts. Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Workers plan to walk off the job or call out sick. Meanwhile, other protesters will take to the streets in cities nationwide to demand states loosen shelter-in-place rules and reopen. For the first time, former Vice President and potential Democratic nominee Joe Biden is expected to address the sexual assault allegations from a former staffer in his Senate office during an interview today. His campaign has previously said that the allegations are not true and absolutely did not happen. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer told ABC she believes women should be able to tell their stories, but the story does not match the man she knows.
I would just say that the Joe Biden that I know, these stories are inconsistent with what I know and what I've seen in terms of the work that he's done to support women.
Whitmer is said to be on Biden's short list to be his running mate for vice president. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael, sir, thank you. Thank you very much. Michael Barr there with your news, your headlines worldwide. Here's your price action this Friday morning. Futures just a bit softer, a little bit lighter. We're down 2% on the S&P 500. March was the biggest month of losses going all the way back to 2008. April was the biggest month of gain going all the way back to 1987, Tom. It has been that whippy, that volatile.
Nice of you to bring that up. I went long March 1st and just piled out March 31st.
Perfect.
That really worked out.
I would expect nothing less from you, sir. Congratulations.
Room for grad.
That bill's down to table scraps.
From New York City, alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance on this Friday morning. Good morning. We're live on Bloomberg Radio.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education
and to finish what I started to get my diploma.
Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you are thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversation.
Just this wall and that one to do, Dave, and then we're done. Whoop! Oh, no!
Hello, Steve the Sparky.
Pass us that roof tile, Chris.
Yep, sure. I'll be fun. Oh, no.
Saved by the gutter. Built to rough it with contractors. Samsung Rugged Devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today, search adult social care jobs now.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are sinking as investors begin a new month pondering gloomy corporate news and the persistent economic turmoil caused by the coronavirus. Contracts on the NASDAQ 100 index leading declines in the wake of sobering comments from Amazon.com and Apple about the pandemic's impact. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 59 points, Dow futures down 464, and NASDAQ futures down 226. The 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 0.61%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.1% or 3 cents at $18.81 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.25% on $4.30 at $16.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0981 against the dollar. British pound 1.2545, and the yen is at 106.78. Chevron slashing its capital spending for the second time in 5 weeks. And another earnings news, Clorox boosted its sales outlook driven by the virus impact, and Honeywell suspended its guidance for the year. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. It is likely to be one of the defining subjects of the upcoming election campaign, China and America's relationship with the Chinese government. Some news overnight from our team in Washington, this coming from Jenny Leonard, who said the following: President Donald Trump is exploring blocking a government retirement fund from investing in Chinese equities considered a national security risk. Tom, this one climbing up the agenda over the week.
Climbing up the agenda, it's fascinating to see, John, how this plays away from the media and Wall Street over to the public. It's May 1st. Kevin Cirilli joining now, our chief Washington correspondent. Kevin, we're beginning to frame July. How does China play in July, and how do politicians of all stripes try to get to July?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think that there is bipartisanship on scrutiny of China, and this predates the coronavirus. When I talk with people like Senator Mark Warner, who's the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, representing the state of Virginia, and so I think what Jenny reported last night, which was essentially the U.S. through power of President Trump's executive order could untangle itself from investing in Chinese equities for the retirement savings accounts over the long term that was set to go into effect mid-2020, that is just one of the wonky tools at the administration's disposal. This could touch everything as we play this out into the summer months. From higher education, there are steps that the Congress as well as the White House could take in terms of higher education. There are steps that they could take as it relates to tariffs, as the president once again openly was thinking about in comments that he made publicly to reporters yesterday. So we're going to be talking about this every which way. But from a political standpoint, and I'll keep this part of the answer quick, the president wants to be tough on China heading into an election year, and Democrats are going to want to say that the U.S. needs to restore its footing in the world with Europe. So there's a way for Democrats to be tough on China, but also still attack the president in terms of his rhetorical approach for international coalitions. But it's to do it by saying restore the relationship with Europe.
Kevin, I'm struggling to understand what the tipping point is in terms of what China has done to necessarily trip the U.S. into further sanctions, further tariffs, whatever the additional measures are. There is some speculation on the part of President Trump that the virus was released accidentally by a Wuhan lab and that China is covering this up. China has denied this. U.S. intelligence agencies also saying that there's no evidence to support that. What sort of are the key issues that will tip the U.S. into action?
Transparency. China has refused to allow for the best scientists in the world from America and to a lesser extent Europe to allow to go into Beijing to help out with this problem. China kicked out journalists, kicked out American journalists from their country. So this lack of transparency that Xi Jinping's Communist Party has displayed here is egregious, and that is across the board, not a political statement. That is criticism that has come from the U.S. Intelligence Committee, from the State Department, from Democrats on Capitol Hill, from Republicans like Senator Marco Rubio and others. And so this lack of transparency and their and the Communist Party's ability to infiltrate the World Health Organization has raised serious questions. I mean, the notion that the World Health Organization, and this is just a Washington speak, the notion that the World Health Organization didn't label COVID-19 a global pandemic while countries in Europe were already ordering shelter in place, that's not a red flag, that's a red flare. That's a siren that went off. Why did the World Health Organization wait so long to label this a global pandemic? And so that relationship, and I can tell you this, I was speaking with a Democrat House member yesterday, the hearings that are going to go on from the foreign intelligence, every committee that explores foreign intelligence and foreign policy and geopolitics, the second lawmakers can step foot back in Capitol Hill, whether it's virtually or literally on foot, they are going to be talking, why was China just so egregiously not being transparent with any of their data? And honestly, and this is the last point I'll make on this, forget about Republicans for a second. I'm hard-pressed to find one Democrat who actually believes the data that's coming out of China as it relates to COVID-19.
Well, let's talk about policy options, shall we? The Washington Post was reporting yesterday that maybe the United States would explore voiding U.S. debt obligations to China. I have to say, up front, several officials came out very quickly and poured some aggressively freezing cold water over that suggestion. But there are bills out there. Senator Rubio produced the Equitable Act last year. Didn't really go anywhere, Kevin. It involved delisting Chinese companies if they didn't adhere to accounting standards in America, and there were all kinds of regulations that he wanted to push forward as well. Talk to me about the senators behind all of this. Senator Rubio, Senator Cotton, the kind of things that they're producing at the moment that they'd like to see the White House get a hold of and go forward with.
And I would add Senator Lindsey Graham to that list. I would add Mark Warner to that list, Marsha Blackburn as well. I mean, and other Democrats. Even Senator Amy Klobuchar has a record, and she's on the VP shortlist for former Vice President Joe Biden, has a record of being at least very skeptical of the Chinese. Absolutely. Look, this was a 2017. This is really in the weeds, but in 2017, there's a bipartisan commission that is an appointee commission. Think how financial services is regulated, but in terms of foreign policy. And what they wanted to do was to have investments in Chinese equities for a longer term. Retirement savings funds that was set to go into effect mid-calendar year of this year, and the president now saying, hey, wait a minute, let's rethink this. And so in addition to just this one small tool that they could do, higher education, and especially for how China is able to use the higher education system in the United States, that's something that has a so much bipartisanship to explore for as it relates to China. And of course, the thing that we always talk about is tariffs and trade and whatnot. But this issue of China is not going away. It's going to intensify in the short term, and it already is.
Kevin, always great to get your thoughts on a show. Kevin's already there down in Washington. Tom, you don't hear much about Phase 2 anymore, do you? Phase 2 trade agreement.
I was going to cut in there, folks, but I was reading last night the British philosopher John Farrow, who was all lathered up about so much for Phase 1. I mean, you wonder, John, the goodwill the president could generate right now by a tariff adjustment.
Yeah, I'm not sure the electorate is keen on Phase 2 either at this point, and maybe that plays into the policy effort for the months ahead. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Futures.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone DreamLab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell in New York this Friday morning on May 1st. Equity futures down by 2.26% on the S&P 500, down 65 points on the S&P. Your member weighting for Amazon around about 4%. So a big chunk of the move today coming from both Amazon and Apple as well. Apple is negative in early trading. Amazon is down around about 6%. The why? Here's the killer quote from Jeff Bezos of Amazon in the press release after the earnings came out yesterday. If you're a share owner in Amazon, you may want to take a seat because we're not thinking small. Under normal circumstances in this coming Q2, we'd expect to make some $4 billion or more in operating profit, but these aren't normal circumstances. Instead, we expect to spend the entirety of that $4 billion, Tom, and perhaps a bit more.
Yeah, well said, John. And of course, what's so interesting here, John, is each of these companies has their own story, their own cultural and financial character as well. I was absolutely fascinated by the Amazon approach, and of course Microsoft a few days earlier, and we saw from Apple as well. Lisa, to me, what's so interesting here, before we get to Gene Munster, is I would love your thoughts on Apple's tone of product. I think buried in all this gloom was their products actually surprised remarkably well.
Yeah, and it had to do with wearables and their laptop and iPad businesses, which I have to be completely transparent. I have personally participated in with emergency purchases to get enough screens for the entire household to be absolutely glued at all times to make sure that nobody bothers anybody. But I will say, I'm not alone. Every person who I talk to, especially if they've got kids, have been purchasing multiple devices to just make sure everyone's hooked in for school, for play, for whatever.
For Minecraft. Thank you so much for that perspective. My goal, folks, this weekend is to get out of sleepy, and I've given up on getting a nightmare. I'm going to try to get to Insomniac on Bed Wars of Minecraft. He knows it well. Gene Munster, for years at Piper Jaffray. Gene Munster with Loop Ventures now on where we are in technology. Gene, I know John's got a lot of questions on philosophy. Let me ask you a cash question. They raised the dividend 6% at Apple. They've retired 24% of the stock in about 5 years. What's the January 1st cash return to Apple to shareholders? Can I say it's as high as 7%?
Yeah, that's exactly the right number if you look at the dividend plus the buyback. That's the numerical piece. There's also the message behind that $50 billion increase, something that I did not anticipate, unprecedented in these times. And I think it is probably elementary to connect the dots that is a sign that they believe that despite 2020 largely being a throwaway year for Apple and most companies, I think that it will, the company feels confident about the cash flow to continue to support this massive growth opportunity long term.
Yeah, disappointment this morning and overnight, Gene, that we didn't get a forecast. But from what I hear from you, are you saying that is the guidance? That is the forecast? It's the increase in the buyback?
Right, that's well said, John. That is what investors should undoubtedly take away from this, too. And another piece around the forecasting is that the product line is intact. These are product companies. I mean, every company, Facebook is a product company, Google, Apple, it's a little bit more clear just because they have physical products. But ultimately is keeping that product roadmap on track is critical. And what if I would kind of take a step back and look at this quarter and the contours of the quarter, I think that the message is that, yes, it's difficult, that they will be impacted, but ultimately they're making the right decisions to be leaders and to benefit. So if you're going to put all this into the math, their business is probably going to be down 5 or 10% in the June quarter, but fast forwarding to next year, it'll probably be up 15%. So I think we're going to see some kind of a return to growth off of easy comps, but a return to growth nonetheless next year.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that this is the kitchen sink year for 2020 when you think about what some of these companies are throwing in, and yet Apple still managed to eke out a profit and increase dividends and share buybacks. I'm wondering if in some ways we're seeing actually a strengthening of the core businesses of some of the big tech companies with the idea of diversification. We're seeing that with Apple, with an increase in sales away from their iPhone product and towards services, which they've been pushing. And we've seen this certainly with Facebook and some of the other things. I mean, are you seeing this pretty much across the board, diversification and a greater resilience of big tech, despite what the share price is saying?
Well, I think you have to look at it like Fang on a case-by-case basis, but in the case of Google and Facebook, it is less diversification, more about their core advertising businesses. Not a lot has changed there. In the case of Apple, you're exactly right. I mean, they've had the services theme for a long time. Wearables out of nowhere, AirPods has had an impact. They don't break out the wearable segment, but based on comments that they periodically make, we can back into what that growth is. And so in the March quarter, it was up 24% year over year. That compares to up 44 and 50% in the two previous quarters. So it did decelerate, and they expect it to decelerate again. But that does not change the message. You're absolutely right, is that in Apple's case, this is still a large part of their business is iPhone, half of the business. But ultimately, this is going to be much more than an iPhone story longer term, all those wearables. And they did give a teaser, if you're curious, about some future features within Apple Watch that should continue to boast the wearable segment.
Just got a headline crossing a Bloomberg. It comes from an oil company, Exxon, posting its first quarterly loss in at least 32 years. And of course, the big oil companies have got to cut back on capex. So let's move to Amazon. Amazon has this amazing luxury of acting counter-cyclically, just flicking the spend switch all over again. And when Jeff Bezos says you may want to take a seat, which seat are you in, Gene? Are you in the back seat or the front seat? Because if I'm a shareholder right now, I'm just surprised how disappointed some people are that here's a man leading the company, willing to invest in his company at a time like this so it's in a better position in years to come.
I think that investors are largely on board with everything that he's doing. The stock has moved higher since the peaks in the market, so it's near all-time highs. Obviously down today, but I think that the big message is investors are largely supportive of that. I want to put quickly into context the amount of spending that he's talking about. The sit down, the $4 billion. What does that mean relative to their past? In the September quarter last year, they talked about a $900 million step up over the next, or in that quarter, the September 19 quarter, $900 million for same-day delivery and AWS investment. So we're talking about essentially a 4x acceleration off of an already high number. So this is some pretty steep spending that they're going through. The right thing longer term, Amazon is going to become foundational to the U.S. in terms of infrastructure, delivery, commerce, all that. But I think as an investor, one question, front seat, back seat, is what do you pay for this ultimately? And I think that they generated $2.5 billion in GAAP net income. Apple generated $11.2 billion, and they both had the same $1.2 trillion market cap. So I think there is the question about valuation that has to be answered.
Well, is that going to come through the cloud and 70% of business or whatever it is? Or, Gene, does it just come through this continued capture retail? I should point out, folks, that as Amazon was dazzling all, including John Farrell, with their public performance, J.Crew, JCPenney, Macy's are on oxygen. I mean, Gene, do they have more room to take retail, or is this all going to be done with the cloud?
Probably more room in retail. Cloud is more competitive. They're not growing as fast relative to the other cloud competitors in AWS. Still a big business, the largest one out there. But let's just take the retail piece alone, is that it seems obvious that e-commerce has done well, but it's still relatively small, call it 15% of what people spend in the U.S. And so the offline piece, what they can do there about transferring delivery, making some of that frictionless, bringing more of that online, is still an incredible opportunity, the biggest opportunity for the company.
Gene, this has been too short. Let's do it again. Gene Munster, Loop Ventures, with us today on technology, where we are. That's what we love, folks. Great conversations with the like of Mr. Munster and Mr. Mahaney of RBC as well. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology. They offer an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Lisa, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's starting today. Nearly the entire city of Baltimore will be constantly recorded from the sky as the movements of roughly 600,000 people are photographed once every second from planes flying over the city, creating a continuous visual record. Analysts alerted to homicides and other violent crimes will be able to zoom in on an address and track movements of potential suspects and witnesses forward and backward in time, telling officers where to look for people who were at the scene. Community activists say the technology will deter public life, but a federal judge has approved the pilot program. Technology is the solution, but what's the solution to technology? Specifically, how do you manage your screen time when you're working from home? Maybe you're facing screen burnout. That's something that happens to you, not your screen. Neurologist Dr. Judson Brewer says, watch out. You can tire yourself out if you feel pressured to multitask when you're working remotely. A
lot of people like to think that multitasking is actually effective and efficient, but there's plenty of neuroscience now showing that it actually totally ruins our brain. It's not good. It's inefficient. It's ineffective.
And maybe you've noticed what Chris Jackson has noticed. He's a VP at Popin, an app that crowdsources feedback at businesses including Ford and Microsoft. He's seen a lot of talk on his app about something workers are dubbing Zoom fatigue.
I see the struggles is the teams that have a bit of a propensity to set up a Zoom meeting the minute an idea pops into their head.
His tip, try getting some work in before you video conference. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
And we have breaking news. John, Lisa, Tom. Former Vice President Joe Biden is denying sexual assault claims against him. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee says this never happened. A former staffer, Tara Reid, accused Joe Biden of sexual assault. Experts say the coronavirus pandemic is likely to last as long as 2 years and won't be controlled until about 2/3 of the world's population is immune. According to the report from the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, people may actually be at their most infectious before symptoms appear. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK is past the peak of the coronavirus outbreak. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans reports from London.
Boris Johnson has promised to lay out a roadmap to exiting the coronavirus crisis next week, setting out how the UK can get the economy moving again, people back to work and children back to school. The Prime Minister said he wants to encourage the economy to bounce back, but said he does not expect austerity to be part of the post-crisis response. The economic policy response to the pandemic has already cost more than £100 billion this financial year. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
The Republican-led Michigan legislature has refused to extend the state's coronavirus emergency declaration. It also voted to authorize a lawsuit challenging Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer's authority and actions to combat the pandemic. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get back to the news from big oil. There is trouble for some of the big oil majors. Exxon posting its first quarterly loss in at least 32 years. They say one of the goals is to preserve cash for its dividend, Tom. They've frozen their dividend. Shell, of course, just yesterday cut theirs for the first time since at least World War II. It has been rough. It continues to be tough.
On this May Day, John, this has a lot to do with framing up July and then on from there. And, you know, they've got the unknown we have as well. Nobody has a clue where we are 90 days out.
90 days out, a year out, lower capex, Lisa. That seems to be the story.
Which raises a question about oil production heading into the future and potential supply-demand dynamic.
We'll touch on this a whole lot more through the next hour right here on Bloomberg Surveillance, live on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. The St. Louis Cardinals and Boston Red Sox announced ticket refund policies for games not played through May because of the virus outbreak, with some Major League Baseball teams offering plans for cash returns and bonus credit. The Minnesota Twins will credit season ticket holders for missed games, plus give an additional 15% credit of that amount for later games. Baseball's Hall of Fame has announced that it has canceled the July 26th induction ceremony in Cooperstown because of the pandemic. Instead, the class that includes Derek Jeter will be included with any additional new choices at next year's induction festivities. Britain's Premier League offered a proposed timetable to clubs for return to action. It will see them back in full training on May 18th, with the league resuming on June 8th. The Daily Telegraph reports the timetable is subject to government approval. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Global News 24.
Fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's easier than ever for people to make an honest mistake and lose their money. TSB doesn't think anyone should have to pay for being an innocent victim of fraud on their account. That's why they've created the TSB Fraud Refund Guarantee. To find out more, visit tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're watching shares of ExxonMobil down about 2% in early trading. It posted its first quarterly loss in at least 32 years amid the economic and industrial devastation wrought by the COVID-19 contagion. The worst may be yet to come, though. The world's largest oil explorer, aside from Saudi Aramco, reported a $610 million loss. The result is just a precursor of even starker figures to come because the earnings period ended on March 31st. That was 3 weeks before crude prices tumbled into negative territory for the first time in history. AbbVie reporting a first quarter profit that beat analyst estimates. Futures this morning are lower, with S&P futures down about 56 points, Dow futures down 438, and NASDAQ futures are down at 207. The 10-year Treasury up 9/30 seconds, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 2%, up 37 cents at $19.21 a barrel. And COMEX gold down 1/3%, or $6 at $16.8820 an ounce. The euro 1.0978 against the dollar. The yen 106.77. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. You will always find a political leader somewhere unhappy with the polls, unless, of course, the polls improve. The President of the United States retweeting our colleague Stephen Dennis in the last 24 hours, who released the Gallup poll, of course, commented on that. 49% approval for the President, up 6 points. 47% disapproval, down 7 points, Tom.
There's a dynamic here and a distinction, folks, with the 47 other polls out there as everybody's trying to micromanage the moment, the game. Gallup takes a broader view. They try to find the emotion, the fabric of the American culture. Their editor-in-chief, Mohammed Yunus, joins us right now. To John's introduction there, Mohammed, and I think it really points to the president and his trip to Arizona, manufactured here for, I believe, May 5th to Honeywell. Real simple. Does he have forward momentum away from the 8 zip codes covering him in the East Coast media?
I think that's the sort of the $1 million question him and his team are trying to figure out. I'm really happy you started out with the presidential approval number overall.
That was John's idea, not mine.
Yeah, so it's 49. But what's interesting is that when we asked sort of March to April, how people are doing in terms of these key actors in the crisis, the president and Congress actually lost the most support. So in March, he had 60% approval on how he was handling the crisis. In April, he had 50. Congress went from 59 to 48. So I wouldn't read too much into the tick up to 49. It's obviously an ongoing sort of saga. What's really interesting is that unlike most periods in presidential approval eras, there's a lot happening right now. I mean, there are a few times when the president of the United States is directly addressing the nation on a daily basis. We've polled on whether or not people are tuning in to the press conferences to get information. And a minority of Americans are doing that. As you can imagine, Republicans are tuning in more than Democrats. But on the whole, I think it's still really early to sort of make too much of any movement there. Right. The other really key factors are, as you know, the economy. And I think whoever is going to come out sort of on top in terms of figuring out how to get America out of this situation, instinctively for the politicians, right, is going to get a reward. And that's, I think, what everybody's grasping towards. Interestingly, though, when you ask Americans about how to get out of this economic hole, their trust is in local actors. So Americans, when you ask them, for example, who do you have confidence in terms of getting things back to normal with the economy, the governor in your state gets 68% getting a great deal or fair amount of confidence. And that's the highest. It goes down after that to Jerome Powell, 58%. Steve Mnuchin, 51, President Trump, 47, the Republican leaders, 47, and then the Democratic leaders in Congress, 46. So Democrat or Republican, that's not where America is really looking to solve this problem.
But that's exactly where I wanted to go, this idea of what Americans are looking for to direct whether they like someone or they're not. In terms of President Trump's approval rating, what are the main issues that week to week seem to sway the population the most? Is it the consumer comfort, which seems to be deteriorating rapidly? Is it the expectation about personal financial situation? What are the main issues here?
The major issue is the economy. I mean, we've been asking Americans 2 questions and creating something called the Economic Confidence Index since the 90s. And it basically asks how economic conditions are for you today and your perception of the future. This month, we had a 54-point drop in that index. It sort of levels at 0, goes up to plus 100 and negative 100. It was the largest 1-month change in our tracking since 1992. That 54-point drop, among Republicans, it was actually 72-point drop. So that's a very kind of, when you talk about the partisanship thing, Americans tend to assess how the economy is doing based on whether they like basically the leadership in the White House lately. But what we know for much longer, that's really a phenomenon sort of in the post-Obama Trump era. But we know for a longer period of time is the economy is always the number one thing when you ask Americans, what are the policy issues that are going to drive your vote? That and healthcare. So the economic issues are going to be really, really key, more than ever, I think, to this election. The other piece is getting back to normal. And we've been asking Americans, whether if there were no restrictions currently, sort of, would you just get up and go back to doing what you were doing? At this point, only 21% of Americans say that they would sort of resume normal activities right now. 36% say after there are new cases in your state decline significantly. Another third say after there are no new cases. About 12% say that they're going to wait until a vaccine is developed. We do see a partisan split on those issues. So, for example, compared to that sort of 20% for the national average. 44% of Republicans say that they'd sort of get back to normal right away. But it's interesting that it's been an increase, 19-point increase in a month for Republicans, but it's still only 44%. So as Americans now have a more optimistic view, I mean, they're still very concerned about the crisis, but when you ask about is it getting better or worse, we see more Americans now saying things are improving. And the rollout, sort of plays out in some of these local areas. I think it's going to determine how the politics play into the economic.
Mohammed, great to catch up with you this morning. We appreciate your time. Mohammed Yunus of Gallup there on some of the polls from the United States ahead of the general election a little bit later this year, which, let's face it, guys, hasn't really gotten started because of what's been going on. You just imagine that once we start to reopen, things really start to pick up quite quickly.
Oh, you see, but are we going to reopen? I mean, I look at the zeitgeist this morning, John, and particularly across the newspapers, and, there's a huge body of Americans hugely reticent to reopen. And you got the debate of the California beaches as well in their heat wave.
Going to have virtual rallies, Tom. Virtual
I don't know.
rallies.
We're making it up
Zoom.
as we go.
You're excited for that on Zoom.
I've never done Zoom. Can you believe that?
You've never done Zoom? I'll do Zoom with you this weekend.
Oh, God.
We'll set it up. I'm excited.
Folks, I should have never mentioned it.
Equity futures this morning. Good morning to you all. Worldwide, we're down by 1.95% on the S&P 500, coming off the back of the biggest monthly gain since 1987. We get May started. We'll do that as we count you down to the opening bell right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com.
Prince of Darkness here.
Let's rock and roll.
Blaze is taking British rock legend Ozzy Osbourne and his son Jack on a road trip of the USA.
What?
It's him and I, the open road, father and son, in an RV. Ready?
I'm ready. I feel like a king. It's what you call touring, son.
Ozzy and Jack's American road trip starts Tuesday the 5th of May at 9 on Blaze. Take it on. Freeview Channel 63.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dreamlab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
This is an ad for Quick Fit. And even if you're not using your car at the moment, it's worth a listen.
Because although QuickFit are still open for essential maintenance, there's plenty you can do yourself to make sure your car's ready when you need it. Keep an eye on tyre pressures, check fuel and fluid levels, and clear out some of those old cups. They're only going to sit there going mouldy. For more tips and information, visit quickfit.com. QuickFit, still there when you need them.
Let's talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. It is a May Day, and it is a stunning May Day. After the news flow this week, Chairman Powell, President Lagarde, the equity dynamics we've seen, and of course we ended with tech earnings. Amazon, I think, down 6% right now. But we talked to Gene Munster of Loop Ventures and got, I think, a nice picture there. Many people I see raising their price targets on Apple and Amazon as they publish overnight. So we get set for May Day. We welcome all of you coast to coast and worldwide. John, what is May Day like in England? Is it like a big deal?
Well, England's open for business, except we're closed, of course, aren't we? We're quarantined. I believe there's a bank holiday coming up, Tom, but it's not today. It's continental Europe that takes advantage of the 1st of May. The UK typically the first Monday and the last Monday of the month.
Okay, I can never keep a track, but there we are on May Day. And to me, I just want to talk here, John, and Lisa, with all that we've been doing here remote and, the great tech team that's helped us do Bloomberg Surveillance through this month of April as well. When are we going to stop doing this? And John, the bottom line is, with the great team we've got, it's really unknown, isn't it?
Still very
into June or July.
Still very unknown. I was listening to the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, yesterday. Very little clarity on when we'd be reopening there. And I think even when we get a date, I think what we've got to accept, Lisa, is that it's going to be slow and not all at once. And it's going to take months, if not 12 months, to get us back to where we were just a few months ago.
And I think the big question here is, A, that's absolutely right, unless there's some emergency vaccine that's miraculously developed, and even Bill Gates, who's putting his entire foundation's efforts into finding some sort of remedy to the virus, says it's probably between 9 months and 2 years out. There's a question, is that priced into the market? This idea, this rolling wave of viruses, and a lot of people saying it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with this reality of the likelihood of a resurgence in cases that just doesn't seem to be in markets right now, Tom.
I don't know if it's in the markets, but I would note 6,000 deaths yesterday globally, and of course New Jersey with an extremely difficult day yesterday in terms of those difficult statistics. Let us get started as we look at economics, finance, investment. John, just quickly here, your thoughts off Madame Lagarde's performance yesterday. You and I haven't talked about that.
Very academic, slightly robotic, but I think we've got to get over that with President Lagarde. Read the transcript, read her speeches, some quite powerful words, and she really played up the flexibility of the asset purchase program. And I think what that spells out to a lot of people is this bond buying is here for a long, long time.
Lisa, did you hear from Chairman Powell, anything about junk bonds? I thought they were really pretty opaque about it, weren't they?
Actually, that's one of the big issues that people had, and one of the reasons why markets didn't celebrate Christine Lagarde's statement as much as perhaps they had expected to.
Yeah.
She didn't say anything about that, and people have been expecting some sort of hint that they were willing to expand the way Fed did.
Well, there's our deep bond coverage for this hour. We've got to go to equities, and we can do that with Gina Martin-Adams with Bloomberg Intelligence. And she's only on, John, it's right, Gina Martin-Adams only comes on after a month, which is the best in, 23 years or something.
Got to be a monthly game.
It's got to be a monthly game. Gina, we did April. Can you forecast May after the March we had and the April we had?
It's a really good question. I do think that the trend is improving, and that's generally pretty positive. We've had a few things happen over the last 2 weeks that would suggest that the trend is getting confirmed. I mean, most recently we had small caps jump on board with the Fed's foray into purchasing sub-investment grade bonds early April. We've had the strongest 2-week small cap performance in almost 20 years. So we have had suddenly this sort of risk tolerance switch has been flipped, but it's been flipped by policymakers. And that means we need persistent and consistent policymaker support for the equity market to continue to move higher. This is not about earnings. It's not about markets that are pricing in better prospects for growth in the second half. All estimates continue to fall for second half 2020 as well as into 2021. It's about policy. And so I do think what you need to see for the market to continue to force gains into the summer months is just some persistence from policymakers. You have the fiscal authorities talking about more support as long as the Fed remains on board. If you get more support continuing from global central banks, then the reality is that stocks are not going to fight against that wave. But if you have policymakers start to drop the ball, and you have, God forbid, another spike in infections, then I do think that markets are likely to wobble.
Well, let's talk about leadership. Even if we get a wobble, who's more resilient? Where's the leadership come from in the months to come?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have had a massive leadership transition over the course of the last 6 weeks. Since markets, bottomed in the middle of March, you've seen the most volatile stocks, the high-value stocks, cyclicals leading. You've seen small caps start to catch on. So it is definitely a risk-on rally. You would expect that over time, some of that performance starts to fade, but on average, over time, it lasts about 3 to 6 months before it starts to fade. Interestingly, that means we've got to face the summer months, which are historically, seasonally pretty awful for stocks. If you continue to see that performance gain in the volatile stocks and the high value and the small cap stocks through the summer months, I would suggest that you're going to continue to see capitulation. Investors are not going to be able to fight against this, sort of hang their hat on the idea that the fundamentals are weak if the signals from the market are still extraordinarily positive and the policymakers are on board.
Jeannie, yesterday, Bob Michael of JP Morgan Asset Management Chief Investment Officer said that this market feels a lot like it did in the second quarter of 2008 when people put a lot of faith in policymakers and weren't necessarily fully aware or recognizing the scope of the pain and the depth of some of the fractures in the underlying economy and markets. Do you agree?
I actually see it a little bit differently. If you look back at some of the factors that drove performance in 2008, let's take the leverage factor as an example. That cycle was a very obvious, deleveraging cycle. It was an extensive, long recession. Highly levered entities in the S&P 500 have already underperformed the low leverage stocks in 2020 to the extent they did in the entirety of the 2008-2009 experience. The difference between this experience in 2008 and 2009 to me is we viciously, rapidly priced in an extraordinary weakness in the month of February and March. That's very different than 2008, 2009. If you think of 2008, 2009, it was this sort of slow bleed. The other thing to consider is policymaking. You didn't get the Federal Reserve really on board with QE until late 2008. You didn't get your fiscal package until early 2009. We had all of that already. So timing is very different. What we priced in is very different. I mean, I would argue that just in the month of March, we priced in a tremendous amount of bankruptcy and default risk. We are slow to recognize that because it's very unusual that you price it so viciously and so rapidly in a month. That's precisely what we did in terms of rotation in the equity market.
Gina, are people in this market? I mean, to John's question there earlier on breadth, I mean, did a lot of people enjoy April?
No, it's, which is very typical, frankly. In the first 6 months of every recovery out of recession, honestly, you usually have very little participation. I
mean, John, did you enjoy April?
I'm not sure how many people enjoyed April, Tom, from any particular perspective.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I just, like you say, Gina, it's lonely, right? I mean, it's a lonely rally.
It is, and it's lonelier than usual because we're all quarantined in our homes. So there's a human aspect to this that's much different than the typical recession response. But what I will say is it's not unusual for investors to be really slow to get on board. It's not unusual for investors to miss out on the first 3 to 6 months of a rally and sort of work against it because we're all very fundamentally anchored, and the fundamentals are horrible. There's no doubt about it. The fundamentals are horrible. Companies are pulling guidance. They're cutting spending. They're cutting dividends. They're cutting buybacks. There's just not a lot in the fundamentals to make you feel good, and worse so than most recession experiences for 2020 anyway.
We've had a 31% move off the bottom, Gina, on the S&P 500. Are you surprised by how polarized this market still is? That we have one camp talking about a retest of the low still, and another camp saying ignore the fundamentals, we're going to the moon?
I'm not entirely surprised, to be honest with you. I'm very accustomed to, for 10 years now, the bear camp has been much louder than the bull camp. For 10 years, every rally is supposed to be faded because the fundamentals are weak. So to a large degree, it's become just part of the market language that we're generally very skeptical of equities at large. I'd say we're more skeptical because of the unique experience of the coronavirus, and investors are just naturally very hesitant to jump on board. When we're in this bizarre world where we're watching the rate of infections as our primary guide, that's very uncomfortable for investors in the equity market. We tend to think as I mentioned, we're anchored in fundamentals. We like to look at earnings trends. We like to look at, who the strong versus weak are on even leverage at this point in the cycle. And some of those guideposts are not particularly relevant. And that's an uncomfortable position to be in. But as I said before, it's not unusual coming out of recession for policy to be the primary driver of performance, and then eventually fundamentals catch up. We could be waiting a long time for those fundamentals to catch up, but that's kind of a normal experience.
Gina, always great to get your thoughts on the show. Fantastic to catch up with you. Gina Martin-Adams there of Bloomberg Intelligence. Equity futures are down 2% in the early part of trading this Friday morning. Let's take the opportunity to get you some headlines, some news worldwide. We can do that, as always, with Michael Barr.
Good morning, John, Lisa, Tom. Former Vice President Joe Biden denied a sexual assault allegation made by former Senate staffer Tara Reid. In a statement released today, the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee said, quote, I want to address allegations by a former staffer that I engaged in misconduct 27 years ago. They aren't true. This never happened. Reid says that while she worked in Biden's Senate office in 1993, he pushed her against a wall office building, put her hand up her skirt, and then sexually assaulted her. Starting today, millions of Americans in some states will be able to eat at restaurants or shops in stores. In dozens of states, they are partially reopening their economies, even though many did not meet the White House criteria of 14 consecutive days of decreasing coronavirus cases. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro has more.
Dr. Anthony Fauci says governors deserve some wiggle room.
But my recommendation is, don't wiggle too much.
The federal government's top infectious disease expert is watching at least 31 states lift some restrictions on commerce. In Texas, for instance, retail stores, restaurants, even movie theaters may reopen at 25% capacity.
Try as best as you can to abide by the guidelines that were very well thought out. Some of them are doing that, but others are taking a bit of a chance. I hope they can actually handle any rebound that they see.
Since the first known death in early February, the virus has killed more than 63,000 Americans. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Essential workers will strike nationwide on May Day to demand safer conditions during the coronavirus outbreak. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr said thank you. Thank you very much. Michael Barr there with your news, your headlines. Here's your price action this Friday morning. The S&P 500 with a big monthly gain for the month of April. The biggest monthly gain going back to 1987, up by 13% just in the 1 month alone, bouncing back from a really ugly month of losses in the month of March. Your equity market this morning, negative by 57 points on the S&P 500. We are down by 2%. Amazon deeply negative. Apple slightly negative as well. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
"25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Influential conversations from Blue.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We continue to watch ExxonMobil in early trading. Shares are down almost 2%. It posted its first quarterly loss in at least 32 years amid the economic and industrial devastation wrought by the COVID-19 contagion. Chevron is down 0.5%. It's slashing capital spending for the second time in 5 weeks. Futures are lower. S&P futures down about 62 points. Dow futures down 464. NASDAQ futures down 219. 10-year Treasuries up 9/30 seconds. Yield 0.61%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 7.5%, up $1.38 to $20.19 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $7.20 at $16.87 an ounce. The euro 1.0973 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2517, and the yen is at 106.70. 0. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting week for the relationship between the President of the United States and the Chinese government. It really started Wednesday evening, Tom, with that interview with Reuters, where the President said that Beijing will do anything they can to make him lose his re-election bid, and then it really just took off from there.
I think your point, John, is extremely well taken. It's unlike before where it was like one event. To me, it's 3, 4, even 5 events over the last 10 days?
The last 10 days, I'd say it's 10 over the last 3. We had a report out of the Washington Post, which has been denied around the debt story and the relationship between the United States and China over treasuries and the treasury market. That's been denied, put to one side. But the prospect of more tariffs is back on the table. The prospect of introducing regulation about curbing investments into Chinese equities and a clear distrust, Tom, around what's happened with this virus and this pandemic.
Let's do a brief here, folks. On this May Day, of course, a big deal in China. Henrietta Trace joins from Veda Partners on Washington policy. Henrietta, this is, John and Lisa have been out front of me on this. But Henrietta, this is really caught up quickly. Let me look back, as John did yesterday on Twitter, asking if phase 1 is dead. Is the whole tariff dance of the last 2 years, is that done?
You know, that's maybe one way to put it. I think we're actually ramping into a different kind of a gear that I find a lot of similarities to the trade war that we had for the last 2 years. So the tariff-specific conversation, I don't expect, especially during a recession or even a depression, that we're going to escalate tariffs from here right now. But they're certainly not going to come off, and they're acting on and exploring a whole host of other ideas, from export control restrictions, which they meaningfully expanded on Monday from the BIS, to proposals to fully decouple, whether it's on the pharmaceutical side or broader healthcare side. That is the next phase. So it's not tariff specific, but it is absolutely a redo of the trade war in just a different arena.
Well, Henrietta, on this topic of decoupling, what is the front that you think we should pay a lot of attention to? Obviously, Senator Rubio has been pushing the financial aspect of decoupling over the last couple of years. Should we focus there? Is it elsewhere? Where are you laser focused?
Well, I think decoupling is something that we need to watch from a number of different fronts. So first, start off with the sectors that you think are going to have national security implications, because that's where they'll start. So that's on the pharmaceutical side. That's on chemicals. You know, they make Americans use 90% generic drugs, which come from generic products that are produced in China from their chemical plants, and they produce 90% of the world's supply. So it's a whole range of components that they need. But then when you think about decoupling, you have to remember that if you're the FDA or you're a company that's creating ibuprofen or a knockoff generic product, you need approval from the FDA, which takes anywhere from 3 to 7 years just to form a new plant. So you can't just make a new plant in Ohio. You've got to sort of repeat or have another one somewhere else that you start to slowly get ramped up to speed, so that 3 years from now you can eventually be decoupled. But it takes a long time. But I would imagine they start in the pharma sector, chemicals, and the healthcare space with PPE and masks and all that as well.
Henrietta, I remember back when we were dealing with the trade wars in their first iteration in this cycle, a lot of companies were pushing back and saying this isn't good for our business, and we want to do business with China, and we depend on these supply chains that are complicated and have been built up over time. Is there a different tone now from corporate America saying we need to domesticate our supply chains, we need to decouple for our business, not just a political reason?
I think the business reasons are being driven by the political. I still, despite the last 3 years of what we've had under President Trump and a sort of cry for nationalism and protectionism, a lot of business owners and most economists still say that free trade is actually the best way for you to diversify in the event of a pandemic like this, or in the event of the need for global growth later on. If you have global trade, you use your trade and your productivity as efficiently as possible. That's a pretty standard economic model, and I think most businesses still use that. What they're layering on top now is political risk, and that sometimes is superseding the economic arguments. And so they're saying, all right, well, if we can't go to China because we don't know what's going to go on with tariffs, or even more insidiously, these export control restrictions, you have to get your financing outside of China, you need to get your staff outside of China, and you need to probably produce outside of China. So a lot of folks are looking to Mexico as a natural backstop for another country that might be a better opportunity for them. So I think they're still free market, still free trade, but have to layer on a political calculus as a result of both President Trump's policies, but also now coronavirus, which is going to be a bipartisan opposition situation.
Well, that's it, isn't it? That's the political story, and that's the story. Free trade doesn't win the November election, does it?
Nope, it sure doesn't.
And that's going to be the problem here on out. So let's talk about the other side of the aisle. What's former Vice President Joe Biden's position on all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually think there's a possibility that Biden could be even worse, and that's because what we've seen under Trump is a very U.S. exclusive approach. He's actually said to the EU and Japan and other nations, get in line. We're going to get our deal with China. You can get your own. What President Biden would say is, all right, these tariffs are all on, $360 billion worth of stuff. I like what you've done here. Now let's think about how we can get more out of China from the environmental front, from a human rights front, from an economic front. And he says, let's use the global rules-based world order and try to prop up the WTO, get the EU and Japan to join forces with us, and we all target China together. And that way China can't just stop purchasing our pork and bring the United States farming community to its knees. We can combine forces with the EU, with Canada, with Japan and other nations in the WTO, bolster that, and then really extract concessions from China. Get them to become a developed nation, get them to more fully participate, be more transparent, and actually extract change. So I think Biden is actually a worse situation for China than just President Trump, who they sort of know his playbook already.
Henrietta Trace of Vader Partners. Tom, I don't know about you, but I'll be very surprised if I hear those words from the former Vice President. I like what you've done here on anything, even on the tariffs themselves.
Yeah, and to her point, and John, you've mentioned it as well, there's just zero free trade support in Washington. It just doesn't sell.
Well, across the country, precisely, yeah. Tom. It just isn't with the electorate. And I think that's not just the story in America. It's a story for much of Europe as well in various countries.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned it earlier, the Euro angle with China is going to be something.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on the Europeans, not just from the United States, but also from China, stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they've got to work out their future and where they stand. I don't know if you can sit on the fence for a whole lot longer on that issue. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Long have I waited. The epic finale.
Good people will fight if we lead them.
Of the legendary saga can be yours.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Own Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
Get it now on the Apple TV app.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 60 minutes away from the opening bell in New York City. Equity futures down 2.08% on the S&P 500, down 60 points. Amazon down 5% in early trading. Apple down 3. In the bond market, Treasury shaping up as follows. Yields come in 3 basis points to 0.61%. And in foreign exchange, a mixed one in G10 for the US dollar. The euro a little bit firmer. Euro dollar up 0.2%. The pound a little weaker. Cable coming in 0.6%. The data ahead still to come a little bit later this morning. 9:45 Eastern, a final read on the manufacturing PMI in America for the month of April. Then a little bit later, 10 a.m. Eastern time this morning, we get the April ISM. Tom, we have to take stock of the data that we've seen over the last 6 weeks. It has been absolutely staggering. More than 30 million jobless claims in America.
Yeah, absolutely. The economic tie-up here, John, has been just extraordinary. John, just to go to your wonderful data wrap-up there, the 2-year yield to me at 0.1880 is the headline of the week, and you see it in Germany as well. To me, it's remarkable what the market has said about what Carl Riccadonna said is moving that line out for all these banks longer than where we were at the beginning of April.
Yeah, I think that's the story, Tom, for you and for many people, that these central banks are going to want to keep that front end really, really anchored for a long time. And we talked with Danny Blanchflower about this yesterday.
Yes.
They're going to be conditioned by the labour market experience of the last 5 years, that they could have waited longer. They could have let the labour market run hotter, and that perhaps they shouldn't have raised interest rates when they did. Now, of course, they couldn't have anticipated an event like this, but as they reset with unemployment a whole lot higher, I think they're going to be willing to keep rates low for a whole lot longer than they did previously.
We're going to reset in May 1st here, folks, and wonderfully, this is our interview of the day without question in terms of the micro data of this troubled American economy. Michael Gapin is hugely qualified at Barclays, our chief U.S. economist, but with serious international experience as well. Michael, thrilled you're with us. I want to get right to wages because I know that's what all of our listeners are worried about. What will be the wage dynamic forward given claims and given that jobs report we see in exactly 7 days?
Well, I think it's going to be a very soft labor market, as Jonathan was just alluding to. And we have the unemployment rate probably going to rise to the 18-19% range in April, and it will be elevated, we think, for several years. We might get a lot of reemployment over the next, say, several months and several quarters, but we think that there will be a tail to this in terms of a high unemployment rate and soft labor market conditions for some time. And I think what's been interesting, what we're watching, if you look back to the 08-09 experience and even previous recessions, there's been a lot of nominal wage rigidity in the U.S. As you know, that's been one of the reasons we think core inflation was so stable, even though we had wide swings in the macroeconomy. Firms historically have been reluctant to give wage cuts. We're seeing a lot of reports and reading a lot of news stories where that's not the case this time. So in lieu of even more layoffs, we may actually be getting wage cuts in the near term that could persist for some time. Now, those could be taken back, but it might take some time for that. So I think we have potentially a two-pronged problem here, where we have a lot of slack in the labor market, and at least in the near term, to preserve some employment, some actual wage cuts that may persist for several quarters through the rest of the year. That's what we're worried about.
And Michael, we have seen that from a number of companies just saying we're going to cut salaries across the board by a certain proportion in order to remain solvent through this period. In a recent story in the New York Times, you were quoted saying that you expect the unemployment rate to hit 19.5% in April. Also, you said, given the trillions spent, we would have hoped that federal efforts would have been more effective at stemming job losses. Given the fact that we have seen the surge in jobless rates, what does that tell you about the efforts? Can you just sort of extrapolate forward in terms of what that means?
Yeah, I think the risk here is that anytime you get laid off, even though you think it's for a short period of time, and your employer says, "Look, we're going to do this now. The expectation is we can hire you back," you risk detachment from the labor force. You risk a longer spell of unemployment. You risk a deterioration in skills, and obviously the longer you're unemployed, the harder it is to get back. And so we think what you're ultimately risking slower potential growth and higher unemployment and slack for a period of time. Connectivity to the labor market is hugely important. We know that, and the way that we've done this here in the U.S. is different than is being done in the U.K. and across Europe, where federal support is going directly to firms to keep employees on payroll, where in the U.S. it's going indirectly through the financial sector. And I do think the way we're doing this has meant more unemployment than I think we would like, certainly. Our concern is it's going to lead to a lot more prolonged spells of unemployment than we're comfortable with. So obviously nobody's pleased with where this unemployment rate is going to go, and I do think the way that we structured some of this aid is a contributing factor.
The Federal Reserve is likely going to want to keep rates low for a long, long time, and Tom's been on top of this through the morning. Michael, just sitting on the front end of the yield curve will be the Federal Reserve, and I imagine they're going to produce some kind of forward guidance to convince us that this is going to be the story for a long, long time. And I think what is forgotten often is that 2-year rates after the financial crisis 10 years ago actually didn't bottom out until 2011. It took a long time, Michael, for this market to come around to the idea that rates weren't going higher back to where they were anytime soon. What has the Fed learned from that period, and how do they apply that to guidance this time around?
Well, I think they can move directly to threshold-based guidance. This does depend on how they conclude their framework review, and do they move to a make-up strategy on inflation. But I think they can shift right away to thresholds of unemployment and inflation that would dictate how long they expect to be at zero. I also think that they're strongly considering yield curve control, that you could do that out to, say, 2 to 3 years on the yield curve to complement and strengthen that forward guidance. So it would be a signal that, yes, we have an outcomes-based approach, of course, and we're not going to raise the funds rate off the zero lower bound until we get this combination of inflation and unemployment data. And just to reinforce it, we're going to pin the yield curve at zero.
If you're just joining us, Michael Gapin with us with Barclays. Thrilled he could be with us on this May 1st. I'm trying to figure out yield curve management within the banking and financial system of the U.S. That'll be sport, Michael. One of the big splashes this week was Narayana Kocherlakota in our Federal Reserve show talking, Michael, about negative interest rates. And he created a modest uproar in economics by saying 2-3 meetings from now, this Fed will be considering negative interest rates, as John mentioned, to suppress 2-year yield. And there's economists that just say the guy from Dillon Reed is never going to do this. Is it even thinkable, Michael Gapin, that we would have the facts change so that we would consider going a la Europe?
I don't think so. I'm in the camp that says the Fed has studied this extensively for years. When I was at the board in 2008, 2009, this was under discussion, and I think it's been about a 10-year story where every time they've looked at this, they've consistently come back and felt that it's more trouble than it's worth. So I don't think we're going to switch to that. I think there are other ways to deliver monetary policy support to the economy. The structure of the U.S. is different than it is in Europe, and I think it would cause a lot of disruption to short-term funding markets that the Fed doesn't want to deal with.
Just to sort of continue with the Federal Reserve, its balance sheet, the latest read, which came out yesterday evening, $6.7 trillion. That's the current size of its balance sheet. Many people expect that to exceed $10 trillion by the end of this year. How concerned are you about an increasing politicization of the Federal Reserve as its actions and those of the Treasury Department get more interlinked and the Fed essentially monetizes the U.S.'s debt?
I think in terms of balance sheet size, I'm less concerned because now we had a Democratic administration and a Republican administration, and the balance sheet has expanded under both. So we've had both sides of the political aisle accept the fact that a large balance sheet is what we need to help support the recovery. But I think you bring up a good point, which is virtually every one of these lending facilities is a joint Fed Treasury facility, and we think that there's going to be a deficit of 14 or 15% of GDP this year, and ongoing Fed purchases in some ways can be viewed as potentially monetizing some of that debt. So certainly we need coordination between monetary and fiscal. The Fed just has a tough communication act here really to say, look, we're just acting as an agent of the Treasury, and so they want us to do this. We're facilitating this. This is our role to help get liquidity and credit to households and business. It's a tricky line to walk, but I do think that they can execute it without getting dragged into the political fray too much.
Michael, before we let you go, just quickly, 10 a.m., 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, the ISM for manufacturing, new orders, prices paid, employment. What are you focused on? How should we digest that data when it comes out?
Well, I think certainly it's obviously going to be a bad number. We're going to be paying very close attention to the new orders component and the export component, as well as employment. So I think it's another one of these numbers that we know it's bad. We know things were shut down for the entire month, but we need to know how bad. So I think that we'll take our lead mainly from the data points that suggest to us how intertwined is this globally, and new orders and export orders are one way to look at that. And what I would do is relate this to what we've seen in China. China can't rebound as strongly when the rest of the world is contracting. Their manufacturing sector has rebounded, but it's been a pretty moderate and tepid rebound, in part because global demand is so weak. So I think it's that type of interrelation that could show through in this report.
Michael, fantastic to get up to speed with you, that's for sure. I hope the team at Barclays are doing well. Michael Gapin there of Barclays, the chief US economist. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide. We do that from New York with Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom, former Vice President Joe Biden is denying he sexually assaulted a former Senate staffer and called for any relevant records to be released. In a statement released today, the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee said the allegations are not true. This never happened. Tara Reid says that while she worked in Biden's Senate office in 1993, he pushed her against a wall in an office building and sexually assaulted her. She has said that she reported the incident to 3 senior staff in Biden's office who have all denied being informed about it. President Trump's executive order to force meat processing plants to open is being met with harsh criticism by lawmakers. Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin says that the president's order puts hundreds of employees' health and well-being to the side in order to continue operations for these plants.
We cannot and should not demand that workers go into a setting where they're putting their very lives, their health, and their families' health at risk.
Protesters at the Michigan Capitol, some armed, jammed inside the building where the lawmakers were meeting, demanding an end to the state's state of emergency. Democratic State Senator Dana Polhanke described the scene.
So I was a high school teacher for about 20 years before I became a state senator, so I am no wimp. But what I saw at work yesterday at the Michigan State Capitol, which was a bunch of men in the balcony of this chamber carrying rifles, I'm not embarrassed to say that I was afraid.
About 400 to 700 people stood on the Capitol grounds in Lansing. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I've seen the pictures, and if you haven't seen the pictures, you should see the pictures. And as a foreigner and a guest in this country, it is a very foreign sight to behold. Not something you would see in the United Kingdom, that's for sure. But that's not a judgment of mine on either side of this debate. Equity futures this morning. Good morning to you all. They are negative. We are down 60 points on the S&P 500. We are down by 2.08%. From New York City, good morning to you all. Have a fantastic weekend if you can. This is Bloomberg.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. We keep hearing about how the mortgage market is in turmoil right now, with the growing number of tenants and homeowners skipping rent and mortgage payments. But some are saying that demand for homes to rent and buy could remain strong. Tim Root is former executive at Fannie Mae and current managing director at Citus AMC.
You might have some people that double up, that were two households renting two different places. You might find an argument can be made for them doubling up, so you will need less supply. But I still think fundamentally the economics, the demographics, and the inventory mismatch still bodes well for housing.
Mortgage rates are at an all-time low of about 3.2% for a 30-year fix. That could help and spark some interest in home buying as pandemic measures ease. But with the economy in turmoil, it could be tough for some to qualify. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news.
Long have I waited. The epic finale.
Good people will fight if we lead them.
Of the legendary saga can be yours. The Force will be with you.
Always.
Own Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
Get it now on the Apple TV app.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today. Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. ExxonMobil posting its first quarterly loss in at least 32 years amid the economic and industrial devastation wrought by the COVID-19 contagion. The worst may be yet to come because the earnings period ended on March 31st. That was 3 weeks before crude prices tumbled into negative territory for the first time in history. Exxon shares down 1.5% in early trading. Chevron down more than 0.5%. It's slashing capital spending for the second time in 5 weeks. PG&E reporting first quarter profit that missed analysts' estimates. Futures this morning are lower. Contracts in the S&P 500 are leading declines in the wake of sobering comments from Amazon.com and Apple about the pandemic's impact. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 58 points, Dow futures down 453, and NASDAQ futures are down 207. The FTSE 100 is down about 2%. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.61%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 6.6%, up $1.23 to $20.08 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 0.5%, or $7.50 at $16.8650 an ounce. The euro 1.0981 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.67. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thank you so much. It has been an extraordinary pandemic for oil. We've seen that all, of course, the shock, those negative oil prices of a week ago, etc. But also it is extraordinary to see the history of Royal Dutch Shell here a few days ago. And now the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey is finally confronting this pandemic. And for those of you that remember the names of our childhood, Esso, maybe more obscure, Enco, and the humble oil company, Lisa Abramowitz, Exxon, has been humbled.
Yeah, Exxon reporting the first quarterly loss in at least 32 years today. Meanwhile, Chevron reported deepening cuts in their CapEx, and this does come after the dividend cut of Shell. We should note the European major oil companies have higher dividends traditionally. They're cutting their dividends. Exxon trying to preserve capital so it can continue to pay its dividend, and its shares are down just 1% ahead of the open. Joining us now to talk about the path forward, Fernando Valle, who covers oil for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. Fernando, I want to talk a little bit about this reduction in CapEx. Does that give you more hope for the oil majors or less hope that they can emerge on the other side of this in a stronger consolidated position?
Hi, Lisa. It depends. It depends on the situation. For Exxon in particular, they had an issue coming into this that their portfolio had been ravished by years of poor capital allocation. They went into areas that were very high cost. And the new CEO, Darren Woods, was leading a revolution in their upstream segment by going to lower cost frontier markets like Guyana, Papua New Guinea, and Mozambique, and the Permian as well. So they really needed to revamp their portfolio, and that's why you've seen them be a little bit more reluctant than, say, Chevron, that has done 2 CapEx cuts already, because they can afford to do that right now, whereas Exxon really needs those investments.
Fernando, you brilliantly framed there the huge shift of Exxon. The rap here is it's a financial company masquerading as an oil company. Mr. Woods has blown that up. What is Exxon now, and what is Exxon into 2025? Is it actually an oil company now, or is it still a bank distributing a dividend?
It was going back to becoming an oil company, and I think that's still the plan. Exxon moved away from operating their major projects. If you look at the early 2000s, they gave up operatorship to a lot of their peers, which was really something that Exxon had never done. And as you spoke of the Exxon of old, they're really about going into frontier markets, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, and building up those countries because it was such a massive player that they could take that risk and then drive outsized returns relative to their peers. And we saw a lot of that in Darren's strategy for Exxon going forward. But now it's going to have to take a step back because the dividend is sacrosanct, as they've always said, for years. They've never cut it before, and they don't want to start now.
Fernando, I'm struck by this idea that they're pulling back from making acquisitions at a time when everything is on massive sale. Who's out there to pick up all the shale companies that are otherwise going to go bankrupt?
Well, I think you don't need to wait you don't need to pick them up before they go bankrupt. You can wait and pick up the asset.
Okay.
There's definitely a change in the capital structure for the industry. We grew too fast, took on too much debt, and so why would you buy it at 100% of the debt value as opposed to waiting that they are actually going to go bankrupt and picking up the asset?
Fernando, Lisa's question is dead on. I mean, this is the heart of the matter of the timing of picking something up. And you and I know this, Ferdinando. They pick it up for 18 cents on the dollar. How close are we to 18 cents on the dollar?
Well, in some places, you're already there. You can look at some of the distressed players in the Bakken, for example, and they gotten haircuts on their debt about at 30 cents on the dollar already, so not too far from your 18. But it's still going to be more pain, and you don't want to catch a falling knife, Tom. So you wait, you see where they shake out, and it's hard for Exxon to go to their board right now and say, look, we are about to see a massive contraction in our cash flow, but let's go out there and buy. You want to see it. You want to see the other side of the tunnel. You want to start to see some light there before you actually pick up any assets. While we're still falling, it's hard for you to say. We haven't seen the worst of the impact on earnings. We'll probably see it in the second quarter, maybe even third quarter, and that's when you start making a plan for picking up assets.
Are you working next week, Ferdinando?
I am. I'll be
good. We got to get a redux back on this. Fernando, thank you so much. Fernando Valley with us from Bloomberg Intelligence. Lots to talk about in the oil geography as well. Lisa, what's so cool about this, and you're a real student of it with your years in Fargo, is it's hugely geographic. I mean, you know, people in the 3 zip codes I'm looking at right now in this fog in New York today, we're in a fog. And it's visceral how geographic the difference is between the Standard Oil of New Jersey and the others.
Yeah, and there is a question what's going to happen regionally in Texas, in North Dakota, in Fargo, where the population doubled in less than a decade. What will happen to the economies there as you see all of these rigs shut down? And I think that's going to be a major election issue as well as an economic one going forward.
Yeah, we really thank Fernando. Thank you so much for being with us today. We've got lots more to talk about here. Of course, huge shift here from March into April. I thought John and Lisa captured that really nicely, the equity shift that we saw. But far more, folks, to me, it's been the compression in yield. And Lisa, I go back to Carl Riccadonna's single paragraph in his post-Powell note. He's the first one I've seen aggressively framing 2022, 2023.
Yield curve control. That's what everyone's going to be talking about.
I don't understand it. You're going to have to brief it. We need to have a cocktail to go over yield curve control.
Yes.
What is that?
Yield curve
Talk
cocktail.
about yield curve control. Lisa Bramowitz, Tom Keene, stay with us. Good morning, Detroit. This is Bloomberg.
Working on a night move.
Message and data rates may apply. TNC and premise.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on. Choose findandfundmycar.com.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £35 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Have you discovered Disney Plus? Stream the latest blockbuster movies and most talked about series and documentaries. From Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, Disney, and National Geographic. All in one place. Enjoy exclusive originals you can't see anywhere else. Welcome to endless entertainment from just $5.99 a month. Disney Plus. Start streaming now. 18 plus subscription required. T's and C's apply.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
There's in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
In this cycle, we've dealt with a lot of shocks.
It's important to understand what the Fed can and cannot do.
Finance.
There's no asymmetry left in markets. It truly is a zero-sum game.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
Investment.
Very few investors want to own any energy to begin with.
There's a great deal of uncertainty. People are trying to hide in safe places.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Good morning. This first day of May, an extraordinary March and April with this pandemic and the news, frankly, folks, on the pandemic challenging this morning. We saw 6,000 deaths worldwide. New Jersey, just the hardest hit of states in this country. We welcome Bloomberg 1130 in New York. Thank you for listening across New Jersey. Global Wall Street in New Jersey, listening on all of our digital product, and we thank all of you worldwide as well. Bloomberg Surveillance futures lower. And on this May Day, always brought to you by Cohn Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax. Cohn Resnick can help your business mitigate disruption and mobilize for the future. Visit their Coronavirus Resource Center today, cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. And I know he's pulled his forecast, but we'll talk to him anyways. Good morning, Paul Sweeney.
Good morning, Tom. Nice to chat with you here on this Friday morning. You had some big tech earnings last night, Tom. The market was really anticipating Apple and Amazon.